Chapter 738. The Lu Yi in front of him was no longer as weak as before, and his vitality was dim. The young man standing in front of him was in a better state than when they first met. And he didn't know if it was an illusion, but Huang Liang felt that Lu Yi was simply standing there, but he seemed to have become the center of heaven and earth. "Are you sixth Yi?" Yuan Changsuan asked tentatively. He just said that Lu Yi had been freed, but who knew that the other party would appear in front of him in the blink of an eye, and his previous depressed state was swept away and he was full of energy again. If there were people in the world who looked alike, it would be understandable, but Lu Yi was accompanied by Yi and Hu Pa. Who else could this person be but the savior, sixth Yi? "It's me." It's hard to explain the reason in a few words. This time, I encountered some opportunities and was lucky to survive. Lu Yi casually explained and didn't go into too much detail. Huang Liang couldn't help but be overjoyed. "Good, that's great." He was already lamenting Lu Yi's situation and felt that a person like Lu Yi shouldn't die so young. Now that Lu Yi had returned in one piece, he was naturally happy. In his heart, he was once again certain that Yi Lu was indeed a savior who had inherited the fate of heaven and earth. Not only did he not die from that kind of injury, he even encountered an opportunity that could bring him back to life. How could this be ordinary fate? Most likely, the luck of the entire soaring dragon realm was on him. Such a fortunate event, let's toast. Yuan Changsuan was also full of smiles. He couldn't wait to play a set of calligraphy sword techniques to relieve the uncontrollable joy in his heart. "Seniors, please summon all the existing sect masters and formation cultivators of Soaring Dragon to the Medicine Valley for a discussion. I may have a way to solve the crisis of Soaring Dragon," Lu Yi said. As soon as these words came out, Huang Liang and Yuan Changsuan were both shocked. Really? Although the Soaring Dragon realm had won a chance to struggle at death's door in the battle below the ravine, the danger of Soaring Dragon's destruction could not be eliminated as long as the Blood Realm was still attached to it. At the bottom of the ravine, the formation cultivators of Soaring Dragon had already set up layers of formations, so the Blood Tribe didn't dare to rashly descend. But even if the Blood Tribe didn't descend, the Blood Realm's devouring of the Soaring Dragon realm continued. As time passed, the foundation and origin of the Soaring Dragon realm continued to deplete. One day it would meet its end. Towards this situation, Long Teng was helpless and could only sit and wait for death. Now that he suddenly heard such good news from Lu Yi's mouth, how could he not be excited and happy? "I can give it a try." Lu Yi didn't make any promises. He wasn't sure if he could succeed or not. After all, he had never done it before. Even though Lu Yi said so, he wasn't completely sure. When this news spread, the entire cultivation world of Dragon Ascension was in an uproar. Following the summons of the three overlord sects, each of the sect masters and sect masters led their formation cultivators and rushed towards the Medicine Valley. The name of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Manor's Yi Lu became known after the battle at the ravine. Lu Yi's identity as Dragon Ascension's savior aside, just the fact that he was the Dragon Emperor was enough to elevate him to the top of the cultivation world in Dragon Ascension. His attainments in the Tao of formations were unparalleled in both ancient and modern times, far surpassing the standards of the current Soaring Dragon's cultivation world. He was willing to try to end the crisis of the Soaring Dragon realm, so all the major sects would naturally cooperate unconditionally. "Lu Yi, everyone's here." Yi's voice came from outside the grass hut. In the grass hut, Lu Yi slowly opened his eyes, the light in his eyes fading away. It had been 2 days since he returned to the Medicine Valley. In just 2 days, the Soaring Dragon realm had already prepared everything. And these 2 days, he had been staying in the grass hut, comprehending some mysteries. Those mysteries came from Yi Liuli's final gift. Before this seventh sister of his disappeared, she once again revealed the birthmark on her back. But at that time, the appearance of the birthmark was not quite the same as what Lu Yi had seen before. There were obviously many more mysterious patterns around the birthmark. It involved some extremely profound secrets of the Array Tao. With Lu Yi's eyesight, he naturally wouldn't forget after seeing it. On the way back to the Medicine Valley, he had also been comprehending the mysteries contained in those patterns. This gave him the confidence to say those words to Huang Liang and Yuan Changsuan. His cultivation and formation Tao did indeed surpass the entire Soaring Dragon realm, but even he couldn't completely solve the crisis of Dragon Ascension with his own strength. But with the help of Yi Liuli's final gift, this impossible could be realized. Long before the bloody battle at Heavenly Ravine began, Lu Yi had asked the fairy doctor a question. If the clothes were torn, they could be mended. But if the sky was torn, how could they mend it? At that time, he realized that the ultimate goal of his trip to the Soaring Dragon realm was to mend the sky. All this time he didn't have a clear clue, until the last time he saw Yi Liuli's birthmark. His seven sisters' body carried the will of heaven and earth. The additional patterns on the birthmark were the evolution and deduction of the will of heaven and earth itself. It was the source of the ability to mend the sky. After all, the soaring dragon realm had an era where there were divine ocean realm cultivators. The current cultivators seemed to have forgotten the glory of that era, but heaven and earth itself would not forget. This was also the reason why the will of heaven and earth could deduce the method of mend the sky. But with Lu Ye's current cultivation, if he wanted to turn this confidence into a method, it was far from enough to rely on his own strength. He needed to borrow the power of the entire soaring dragon realm. Walking out of the grass hut, there was already a sea of people outside. Pairs of eyes gathered. When they saw Lu Yi, they all bowed in unison. Even people like Huang Liang, Yuan Changsuan, and Guang Jing were no exception. This was their respect for his previous bloody battle at Heavenly Ravine. Lu Yi returned the greeting. His gaze swept across and slightly glanced at the fairy doctor who was standing at the side. This woman was very problematic. At first sight, Lu Yi felt that something was wrong. Not only did she have Hua Xi's face, but even her voice and tone were almost the same. When he returned 2 days ago and saw the fairy doctor again, she was not surprised at all. It was as if she already knew that Lu Yi could come back from the dead. She only used a tone that Lu Yi was very familiar with to tease him. "You're still alive?" It made Lu Yi think that he had really met Hua Xi. Although he was sure that there was something wrong with her, Lu Yi could also be sure of another thing. This woman was not a threat. If she was, he and Yi Liuli would have died long ago. Putting away the thoughts in his heart, Lu Yi said, "Today I invited all of you here for only one thing. How to solve the crisis of the soaring dragon realm. Over the past few days, I believe that all of you are already aware that although we have won the battle with the Blood Clan, as long as we don't break free from the dependence of the Blood World, Long Ting will not be at peace. Sooner or later, the Blood Clan will make a comeback. When that time comes with Long Ting's current strength, it is especially clear whether we can stop the Blood Clan." Although there were many cultivators, they all listened quietly. No one interrupted. When Lu Ye's voice fell, Huang Liang said, "Little friend Yi, since we are here, we will believe you unconditionally. If you have a good plan, please don't hesitate to enlighten us. The entire soaring dragon realm will cooperate with you wholeheartedly." Yuan Changsuan also nodded. "That's right. At this moment of life and death, this old man believes that the cultivators of the soaring dragon realm can work together to overcome the difficulties." Many of the cultivators below chimed in. Lu Yi nodded in satisfaction. "In that case, this Yi will not decline. If we want to solve the crisis of the soaring dragon realm, there is only one way. Let the soaring dragon realm break away from the attachment of the Blood Clan." After 800 years of attachment, the soaring dragon realm has lost a lot of its foundation. 800 years ago, it still couldn't get rid of the attachment of the Blood Clan. Today it is even more impossible. Therefore what we need to do is to use manpower to support the heavenly might. Only then will we have hope of success. How can we use manpower to support the heavenly might? Someone couldn't help but ask. With the formation as the foundation, mobilize the power of heaven and earth. Lu Yi raised his hand and immediately the cultivators who were ready leaped forward and erected a huge jade board in front of him. The jade board was engraved with complicated patterns that were uneven and crisscrossed with each other. This was the topographic map of the entire soaring dragon realm. The uneven areas were mountain peaks and valleys, and the crisscrossing areas were large rivers. This was also what he had instructed the Imperial Heavenly Sect to create. Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed on the jade board. He activated his spiritual power, and in an instant 64 light spots lit up on the jade board. The 64 light spots were distributed all over the soaring dragon realm. If these light spots were connected together, they would form a mysterious pattern that covered the entire soaring dragon realm. I need the fellow Taoists from the various provinces to build a large array formation platform at a designated location. I will teach you the layout and construction method of the large array formation platform later. You only need to follow the blueprint. The scene was silent for a long time. Everyone's eyes were attracted by the light spots on the jade board. Anyone could see that this was a huge project, one that had never been seen in the soaring dragon realm since ancient times. If such a large formation was completed, it would definitely cover the entire soaring dragon realm. Previously, when Lu Yi said that he wanted to use the formation as the foundation to mobilize the power of heaven and earth, they didn't quite understand. However, after seeing the scene in front of them, many people suddenly understood. If this was successful, it could indeed mobilize the power of the entire soaring dragon realm to resist the attachment of the blood realm. As for whether there was a chance to break away from the blood realm, that would only be known when the time came. However, such a large formation that covered the entire realm was not something that the cultivators of the soaring dragon realm could come up with. Moreover, even if it was successfully set up, who could activate such a formation? Even a reborn divine ocean realm cultivator wouldn't be able to create such a large formation, right? The Titanium Temple will be responsible for building the formation platform in Gan Province. In the silence, Great Master Guangjing spoke with a loud voice. The Howran Academy will be responsible for the formation platform in Li Province. Yuan Changtsuan followed. Then the Imperial Heavenly Sect will be responsible for the platform in Yuan Province. As the three overlord sects spoke, the remaining sects responded one after another. However, their strength was not as strong as the three overlord sects, so several sects were responsible for one platform. In just a short moment, all 64 spell altars had been claimed. Brother Yi, what's the name of this platform? How should I address it? Someone below asked. Lu Ye's gaze was faint as he looked at the ravine in the extreme north. He said softly, Heaven Repairing Platform, 7017K. Chapter 739. The 64 heaven-mending platforms were claimed by the various sects in the world. News spread in all directions and many people left. But all the formation cultivators were left behind by Lu Yi. He had already passed down the method of creating and setting up the heaven-mending platform, but even so, with the attainments of the soaring dragon formation cultivators, it would not be easy for them to comprehend the intricacies. If they were left to their own devices, they might not succeed. The main reason they were left behind was to explain the difficulties. Lu Yi had to ensure that there would be no problems with the 64 heaven-mending platforms. 3 days later, all the formation cultivators left the Medicine Valley and scattered to various parts of the world. Lu Yi brought Yi and Hu Po to the Sky Ravine. One of the 64 heaven-mending platforms was the main and the rest were auxiliary. The core and most important heaven-mending platform had to be built directly below the Sky Ravine. Lu Yi was personally in charge of it. In the past few days, the three overlord sects had sent the materials needed to build the heaven-mending platform. Many people were also stationed there, waiting for Lu Yi to take charge of the matter. The entire soaring dragon realm was in full swing. There were many cultivators roaming around the mountain ranges that were normally deserted, and huge spell platforms rose from the ground one after another. For the 64 heaven-mending platforms, the entire soaring dragon realm had used up all their resources. All the sects had opened their treasure vaults, allowing them to take all kinds of precious materials. This was the only way to ensure the progress of the heaven-mending platforms. It was Lu Ye's first time presiding over such a large-scale matter. Even with his identity as the savior of the soaring dragon realm, he still felt great pressure. Below the Sky Ravine he almost did not sleep or rest. He poured all his energy into the heaven-mending platforms, making Yi's heart ache. Fortunately, Lu Yi was full of energy after receiving the world origin energy from Yi Lioli. Even though he was so tired, he did not feel tired at all. He displayed his attainments in formation Dao to his heart's content. Back when he set up the formation in the Medicine Valley, it was to repay the little fairy doctor's medical expenses and also to verify what he had learned. How could it not be the same this time? Presiding over such a large-scale formation was of unimaginable help to his own formation Dao attainments. There was still an enormous amount of information in his mind that had not been digested. It was a gift from the 100 Formation Pagoda. As the days passed, the heaven-mending platform rose at a speed visible to the naked eye. Good news came from all over the soaring dragon realm. Under the premise that the entire soaring dragon realm put aside their prejudices and sincerely cooperated, the heaven-mending platforms were successfully built one after another. In less than half a month, only the core heaven-mending platform that Lu Yi was in charge of was left. During this time, neither the blood world nor the blood race made any moves. Not to mention the blood realm, Lu Ye's shocking slash had weakened the blood realm's attachment to the dragon ascension. This made it extremely difficult for the blood race to descend to the dragon ascension. Last time, the Heavenly Gorge sect had set up a blood river grand formation to guide them. This time, however, there was no one to guide them. Even if the world was left to its own devices, it would not be easy for the blood breeds to descend upon dragon ascension. Therefore, for the time being, there was no need to worry about the threat of the blood breeds. On this day the sun shone brightly and the blue sky was clear. Beneath the ravine, Lu Yi sat on the heaven-mending platform. This core heaven-mending platform had finally been completed the day before yesterday. Everything was ready, and all that was left was to activate the power of the spirit array. Across the world, on each of the heaven-mending platforms, there were 2 or 3 people at the very least, 4 or 5 at the very most, all of them at the 9th Order Cloud River realm. Each of them had a solemn and pious look on their faces, their eyes closed in meditation, ensuring that they were in their best condition. At a certain moment, Lu Yi suddenly opened his eyes as the sound transmission stone in his hand vibrated. He put the sound transmission stone to his ear and listened carefully before putting it away and standing up. The time has come. Looking up at the huge ravine above his head, Lu Yi whispered softly, "Please lend me a hand." As soon as these words fell, Lu Yi took a step forward and arrived at the center of the heaven-mending platform, pouring his spirit chi madly into it. It was as if a stone had been thrown into a calm lake. With him as the center, a layer of ripples began to spread out. As the ripples spread out, lines of lines lit up. These were the lines of the formation engraved on the heaven-mending platform. The light came from the bottom of the platform and like a prairie fire, it quickly spread in all directions and continued to spread downwards. Not far away, many cultivators were watching. Seeing the complex runes appear on the heaven-mending platform and the brilliant light, they could not help but cheer. They did not know if the rest of the process would be smooth, but from the looks of it, today's matter was off to a very good start. When the entire heaven-mending platform lit up, a large number of spirit stones placed inside it were quickly consumed. As such, even though it was a grand display, Lu Ye's consumption of energy wasn't too serious. The energy he used was at most a catalyst. The real consumption of energy came from the spirit stones that were placed in the heaven-mending platform. *dong. A dull sound suddenly came from the heaven-mending platform, as if a huge heart was beating. When the sound rang out, the expressions of many cultivators who were watching could not help but change slightly, and they could not help but raise their hands to cover their chests. Along with the sound, an invisible force field spread rapidly in all directions with the heaven-mending platform as the center. In the blink of an eye, it spread thousands of miles away. On the heaven-mending platform in Gan province, a few 9th Order Cloud River realm monks led by Great Master Guangjing sat with their eyes closed. Buddhist beads flowed on their fingertips as they chanted scriptures. When the invisible force spread through the heaven-mending platforms, Great Master Guangjing opened his eyes abruptly and shouted, "It's starting!" The monks who were already prepared channeled their spirit chi into the heaven-mending platforms they were sitting on. Soon, the heaven-mending platforms in Gan province underwent the same changes as the heaven-mending platform where Lu Yi was. "It's starting!" On the heaven-mending platform in Li province, Yuan Changtsuan shouted, and the masters of Howran Academy channeled their spirit chi together. "It's starting! It's starting!" The cultivators on the heaven-mending platforms scattered all over dragon-soaring continents soon sensed something and activated the power of the spirit arrays in the heaven-mending platforms. In an instant, invisible force fields spread out in all directions with the heaven-mending platforms as the center. In the beginning, the frequency of the spreading was not the same. After all, the cultivators on the heaven-mending platforms activated the heaven-mending platforms at different times. However, as time passed, the invisible force fields seemed to have undergone some miraculous resonating changes. In less than half an hour, the force fields of all the heaven-mending platforms had reached a perfect synchronization. At the intersection of the invisible force fields, a mysterious spirit array that enveloped the entire dragon-soaring realm was formed. Others could not detect these changes, but Lu Yi, who was in charge of the core heaven-mending platform, could see them clearly. He took a deep breath. Success or failure, it all depended on this move. Even though he had done everything he could not help but feel uneasy at this moment. "Array rise!" On the heaven-mending platform, Lu Yi shouted. As soon as he spoke, the world hummed. Lu Ye's mind once again ascended infinitely, but this time the feeling was not quite the same as when he was wearing the dragon throne. When he was wearing the dragon throne, he suddenly received an extremely powerful external assistance. This external assistance exceeded the limits of what his body could endure, allowing him to view everything around him with a state of mind that far exceeded his own foundation. This increase was even more terrifying than the last time. In a daze, Lu Ye's mind seemed to cover the entire dragon-soaring realm. He could clearly sense the location of every heaven-mending platform. All was silent. Time silently flowed through his mind. It was as if the entire world had stopped. However, he knew that this was not because time had stopped, but because his mind had already transcended the restraints of heaven and earth. His strength was naturally far from reaching such an inconceivable level. The reason he could reach this level was all thanks to Yi Liuli's final gift. What she had given Lu Yi was the origin energy of this world. This wondrous power not only made up for Lu Ye's deficiency and allowed him to come back from the dead, it also allowed him to mobilize the power of this world to the extent that he could. If the power of heaven and earth was compared to a sharp sword, then the origin energy that Yi Liuli gave Lu Yi was the hilt of this sword. He held the hilt of the heaven and earth sword in his hand, and wielded the power of this world. Before building the heaven-mending platform, many cultivators in the dragon-soaring realm had a doubt. Even if such a shocking array that covered the entire dragon-soaring realm was divided into 64 platforms, who could activate it? Even the legendary rebirth of a divine sea realm cultivator did not have this ability. Indeed, a divine sea realm cultivator did not have this ability. Lu Yi did. Strictly speaking, only Lu Yi who was in this realm had this ability. When the heaven and earth sword of the dragon-soaring realm was wielded, the entire realm hummed. Lu Yi returned to his senses and looked up at the ravine above his head. His sharp gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the barrier between the two realms and see where the blood realm was. Scram! An angry roar spread throughout the realm. It was the wrath of heaven and earth. As the voice fell, the entire dragon-soaring realm shook violently. The mysterious array formed by the invisible fields mobilized the power of heaven and earth at this moment, turning into an invisible impact that blasted into the ravine. Boom! A muffled sound rang out in the depths of the hearts of all living beings. At this moment, the dragon-soaring realm seemed to have a life of its own and shook violently. For a time, the dragon-soaring realm shook everywhere. Many of the mortals who did not know what was going on prostrated themselves on the ground, praying for heaven's protection. Although the cultivators of the cultivation world knew what was happening at this time, they did not expect such a huge movement. Before they could come back to their senses, another buzzing sound came. The world trembled. The third time. The fourth time, as if doomsday had arrived, the dragon-soaring realm's heaven and earth changed. Dormant volcanoes erupted, great waves swept across the great rivers, and tsunamis filled the sky above the sea. On the core heaven-mending platform, Lu Yi stared fixedly at the ravine across the ravine, constantly activating the power of the array and adjusting the power of heaven and earth. His mood was unprecedentedly tense and dignified, because he was mobilizing the power of heaven and earth to resist the attachment of the blood realm, putting aside the pressure he had to bear for the time being. If he could not end the battle quickly, a huge disaster would erupt in the entire dragon-soaring realm. At that time it was unknown whether the blood realm could escape, but the dragon-soaring realm would definitely be destroyed first. 7017K. Chapter 740. The power of the 64 heaven-mending platforms was released at the same time, and the invisible force field crisscrossed, covering the entire domain. The momentum of heaven and earth was mobilized, and the entire domain seemed to have its own life, shaking its body vigorously. Every time it shook, it would cause the entire soaring dragon realm to tremble, and strange phenomena would occur. The first few times there was no obvious effect. But since the fifth time, Lu Yi could clearly feel that the unfamiliar aura coming from the heavenly gully had become weaker. It was effective. That unfamiliar aura was the aura of the blood realm. The blood realm was attached to the soaring dragon realm, devouring the origin and foundation of the soaring dragon realm. The unique aura of the blood realm was transmitted from the heavenly gully. Now that the aura of the blood realm had become weak, it undoubtedly meant that all the previous efforts were working. Lu Yi did not dare to be negligent. He held his breath and continued to mobilize the momentum of heaven and earth. The sixth time. The seventh time. After a total of 9 times, when the entire soaring dragon realm was about to fall apart and had reached its limit, Lu Ye's eyes were like lightning, looking into the depths of the heavenly gully. He seemed to be able to see a huge monster flying out, quickly leaving the soaring dragon realm. The aura of the blood realm at this moment was extremely weak, almost undetectable, and even this weak aura was quickly dissipating. Success. If the blood realm was compared to a leech attached to a human body, then this evil bug had been broken free by the soaring dragon realm. But it was only half successful. Although the blood realm was broken free, the wound of the heavenly gully still existed. If he wanted to rely on the power of the soaring dragon realm to heal it, who knows how long it would take. If this wound was not repaired quickly, the blood realm could still follow the aura of the soaring dragon realm, and all his efforts would be in vain. Fortunately, Lu Yi was prepared. On the heaven-mending platform, the wind whistled and Lu Ye's clothes and black hair fluttered. He looked at the heavenly gully above his head and slowly raised his hands. He was clearly not holding anything up, but his whole body seemed to be under great pressure. The movement of raising his hands was extremely difficult, and there were bursts of flesh and blood bursting sounds coming from all over his body. His 7 orifices were bleeding, and his spiritual power and blood were boiling. Little by little, inch by inch, he pushed his hands in the direction of the heavenly gully. What he pushed was not his own strength, but the foundation of the entire soaring dragon realm. Heaven. It was just 2 words, but it took all of Lu Ye's strength to shout them out. The heaven platform under his feet shook, and many mysterious patterns flickered, turning into a pillar of light that shot into the clouds and swept towards the heavenly gully. At the same time, the heaven-mending platforms scattered all over the soaring dragon continent had pillars of light shooting up into the sky, one after another sweeping towards the direction of the heavenly gully. At this moment, all the living beings in the soaring dragon realm, regardless of whether they were cultivators, mortals, birds, or beasts, all saw an unforgettable scene. 64 pillars of light leaped up from various positions and rushed towards the ravine. They shuttled back and forth and intertwined. In an instant, a huge and complicated formation diagram suddenly appeared around the ravine. It looked exactly the same as the one Yi Lioli had shown Lu Yi on Sunrise Peak when she had shown him her birthmark for the last time, with her back to him. Lu Yi knelt on the heaven-mending platform, almost exhausted, but his eyes were fixed on the array pattern formed by the pillars of light beside the ravine. Everything was progressing smoothly. Now they had reached the final step. If they could succeed, then the plan to mend the sky would be completed perfectly. If they failed, then the Blood World could still make a comeback, and the soaring dragon empire would not be able to avoid the fate of destruction. However, Lu Yi did not see the scene he had hoped for. When the intertwined pillars of light appeared beside the heavenly gully, everything seemed to be still. The world fell silent and even time seemed to have stopped flowing. He turned his head and looked around. The nearby soaring dragon realm cultivators were still nervous and excited. They looked up at the sky, but they stood there motionless as if someone had cast a spell on them. Lu Yi sighed, feeling a little regretful. After all, he had worked so hard for so long and exhausted all the power of himself in the soaring dragon realm, but in the end he did not see a result. It was more or less incomplete. But he already had an insight in his heart, so he was not surprised. He sat cross-legged on the heaven-mending platform and stuffed a few spirit pills into his mouth to replenish his energy. Then he said indifferently, "Come out. You have indeed sensed it." As a familiar voice sounded, a layer of ripples appeared in the void in front of him. A familiar figure stepped out of the ripples and stood in front of Lu Yi. Even though Lu Yi had long suspected her identity, he still couldn't believe it when he saw it with his own eyes. The little fairy doctor. This woman, whom Lu Yi felt was not right from the first time he saw her, appeared in front of Lu Yi when everything in this world was still. Lu Yi already had some guesses about her identity. This was because after Yi Lioli gave him the origin of this world, he had already seen through the truth of this world, and could clearly see through every living being in this world. Among all the living creatures, the little fairy doctor was the most unique. If he really had to describe her, she seemed out of place with the entire soaring dragon realm, as if she was not a living creature of the soaring dragon realm. In fact, she was indeed not a living creature of the soaring dragon realm. Her identity was also confirmed at this moment. Even though Lu Yi had already guessed it, he was still shocked to the extreme. It's really spectacular. The little fairy doctor looked up at the array diagram next to the heavenly ravine. "I didn't expect you to really do this." "I didn't do my best," Lu Yi replied indifferently. "In the end, I didn't see the end." The little fairy doctor pursed her lips and smiled. "What's so important about seeing the end? It's just a possibility." "So this matter still won't succeed in the end?" Lu Yi asked. Not being able to see the end result was actually a result, because even if the heaven mending was successful at this moment and the heavenly ravine disappeared, the blood realm would still not give up so easily. 800 years ago, when the soaring dragon realm was at its peak, it was still attached to the blood realm. Now that it had lost a lot of its foundation, how could it resist? Even if it could get rid of it for a while, it could not get rid of it forever. Lu Yi had thought about this before, but he still did his best for the heaven mending matter. Because only when he did his best could it be up to fate. "This possibility is enough." Lu Yi was silent. He obviously did not agree with this statement. He had worked so hard for so long and paid so much, but in the end he could not even see the end result. Naturally he was unwilling. But at this moment, whether he was willing or not was meaningless, because time and space could not be reversed. No one could stop what had happened in the past. What really happened in the soaring dragon realm during this time period? Lu Yi asked. Do you want to see? Can I see? Lu Yi was surprised. He was just asking casually because he was unwilling to accept the end result, but he did not expect to get such an answer. Others naturally can't see it, but you are different. If you want to see it, you can see it yourself. The little fairy doctor's words were confusing. But Lu Yi only pondered for a moment and suddenly understood. The origin of heaven and earth. Yi Liuli gave him the origin of heaven and earth so he could come back from the dead, so he could see many things that he could not before. For example, the little fairy doctor's uniqueness. For example, this world had actually been destroyed long ago. In the secret realm of the realm of beasts, Xia Qianshan had once told Lu Yi that in such a large-scale secret realm with an entire realm as the background, the things that cultivators experienced in it were often things that had happened in this world. It was just that the heavens used an inexplicable method to reproduce them. It was equivalent to a silhouette of time and space. Cultivators from the 9 prefectures were active in it and participated in various major events during this time period. When the heavenly situation was smooth, some unexpected changes could be stirred up, and some things that had never happened in this time period would appear. Xia Qianshan was right. The soaring dragon realm had been destroyed long ago. Everyone and the things that Lu Yi encountered this time were silhouettes of time and space in the soaring dragon realm. It was just that with his eyesight he could not see through the truth and falsehood. So no matter what he experienced, it was like the real thing. But in this silhouette of time and space, because of Lu Ye's existence and efforts, the whole world had a different direction and seemed to have another ending. Because of him, a guest from the 9 prefectures, stirring up a storm, the Blood Clan was exterminated, the Blood Realm was freed, and even the plan to mend the sky had reached its final moment. This was the possibility that the little fairy doctor had mentioned just now, but this could not change the fate of the soaring dragon realm at all. Many things were fake and only one thing was real. The source of heaven and earth that Yi Liuli had given him. The source of heaven and earth was branded with the information of the whole world and carried everything of the whole world. That was why the little fairy doctor said that if Lu Yi wanted to see it, he could see it himself. What should I do? Lu Yi asked. The little fairy doctor raised her hand and pointed at his forehead. Lu Yi did not even have time to react before she poked his forehead. His whole body shook, and his soul seemed to have been shaken out of his body. Everything around him changed rapidly, and colorful lights kept shuttling back and forth in his vision. It seemed like thousands of years, but also like only a moment had passed. When Lu Yi came back to his senses, he found that his vision had become very strange. He was high above, looking down on all living things. It was as if he had turned into the whole world. This was the information branded in the source of heaven and earth. Ordinary people could not see it, but since Lu Yi had obtained the source of heaven and earth, he could naturally see through its mysteries. With a thought, everything that happened in the soaring dragon realm during this time was imprinted in his mind. Under the heavenly ravine, heads rolled and rivers of blood surged. The heavenly ravine sect had started a shocking massacre. An elder fled in panic in the direction of the Medicine Valley, pursued by a large group of heavenly ravine sect cultivators. In the Medicine Valley, a young man with a long sword on his back brought his younger sister to seek medical treatment. 7017K. Chapter 741. The old man being chased was the sect master of the Imperial Heaven sect, Huang Liang. He was no different from the Huang Liang that Lu Yi saw. After all, Huang Liang looked the same in this time period. However, the fairy doctor did not look like Hua Xi in the Medicine Valley. She was a middle-aged woman with a gentle temperament. She was neither good-looking nor ugly. The 6th young master of the domineering Saber Mountain Villa who brought his 7th sister to seek medical treatment was not Lu Yi. Instead, he was a young man with a resolute expression and burning hatred in his eyes. Yi Liuli's illness was not like what Lu Yi knew. She was born with a deficiency, so she had been plagued with illness since young. She did not have a birthmark on her back that looked like a centipede or a ravine. This was the truth of the soaring dragon realm. And this time period was when the calamity of the soaring dragon realm was about to begin. Fa Hua and Lu Tianyi died in battle under the ravine. They fought to the death and sent Huang Liang out of danger before they died, allowing him to survive. In Lu Ye's experience, he happened to have set up a shocking formation in the Medicine Valley. Huang Liang escaped here and was saved by him. However, the elders of the Heaven Ravine sect gathered outside the Medicine Valley. Zhuang Bufan activated the power of the Dragon Throne and released the last light of his life. Then Lu Yi obtained the Dragon Throne. This was what he experienced in the space-time silhouette. In the real soaring dragon realm, what happened at this time period was not much different from what he experienced. The only difference was that the real Yi Lu did not understand formations. Naturally, there was no such powerful formation in the Medicine Valley. Huang Liang escaped until now. It was Zhuang Bufan who stood up and killed the enemies. Then Yi Lu's luck was great and he was recognized by the Dragon Throne. After that, what happened in the Soaring Dragon Realm was not the same as what Lu Yi experienced. The Blood Clan was guided by the Blood River formation set up by the Heaven Ravine sect and descended on the Soaring Dragon Realm. The cultivators of the Soaring Dragon Realm fought with their lives, but they were no match for them. At the crucial moment, Yi Lu put on the Dragon Throne and summoned the Dragon Ridge Saber that was sealed under the Vajra Temple's tower. He killed many Blood Clan cultivators under the ravine and finally turned the tables. However, after that battle, Yi Lu died because his origin energy was depleted. What followed was a bloody battle between the cultivators of the two worlds that lasted for several years. Under normal circumstances, the Soaring Dragon cultivators were definitely no match for the guests from the Blood Realm. However, in every major battle, the Dragon Emperor would appear. One by one, the Dragon Emperor Lords stepped forward, burning their own lives to delay the destruction of the Dragon Ascension Realm. However, the Soaring Dragon Realm was fighting against an existence like the Blood Realm after all. The secret techniques of the Blood Race cultivators had an extremely strong corrosive effect on the spirituality of spiritual weapons. In the many battles, the Dragon Emperor's spirituality had also been corroded, and her power had gradually decreased. In the final battle, a Blood Kindred expert brought a treasure from the Blood Realm. While perishing together with the Dragon Emperor, he also severely injured the Dragon Emperor. After this battle, the cultivation world of Dragon Ascension no longer had any room to resist. The blood breeds invaded without restraint, and the entire Dragon Ascension was in deep water. Time flowed by and no one knew how many years had passed. Draconic Ascension's vitality was dim, and its foundation was almost completely depleted. All the living humans had been captured by the Blood Race and turned into their blood food. The Blood World had also left, leaving behind a devastated land. In the history of the Soaring Dragon Realm, everything that happened during this period was magnificent. In the face of the apocalypse there was no savior. What awaited the Soaring Dragon Realm was only a bitter struggle and the gradual pain of destruction. What Lu Yi had experienced was, after all, just another possibility in that space-time silhouette. It was not the real situation. At this moment, what was imprinted in his eyes was a lifeless and extremely barren world. The entire world was silent, without any life, and without the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was as if the entire world had died. This was the current situation of the Soaring Dragon Realm. When Lu Yi came back to his senses, he was no longer standing on the hundreds of feet tall heaven-mending platform. Instead, he was standing on a barren mountain without any vegetation, only gravel and sand swirling in all directions. Witnessing the destruction of a world with his own eyes had an unimaginable impact on Lu Ye's mind. In the end, he was only a Cloud River cultivator. He had never imagined that he would have such a bizarre experience one day. Last time in the realm of beasts, he had not experienced such a thing. At that time, he had only cooperated with other cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance to solve the source of the beast disaster in the realm of beasts. Now that he thought about it, the real realm of beasts was very likely like this. Endless sorrow rose in his heart, but it also gave him a lot of insight. Cultivators were so insignificant compared to the world. If the world could perish, it was even more unworthy of the cultivators in it. He took out the Dragon Throne from his storage space and found that the Dragon Throne, which had been in good condition before, was now full of holes and had lost much of its spirituality. It was obviously no longer useful. The reality of the Soaring Dragon Realm was that it had already been destroyed. The reality of the Dragon Throne was the same. Although he had obtained the Dragon Throne in that time silhouette and activated its power, that was only a reenactment of the heavens through means he could not understand. The real Dragon Throne had been severely damaged in the process of fighting the Soaring Dragon Realm cultivators against the Blood Tribe. Even the blood-red Dragon Ridge Saber's divine light was restrained. Its surface was dark and there were many cracks on the blade. He put the Dragon Throne away again. Although this divine item was damaged and in a state where it could no longer be used, it was still a divine item. If he met the highly skilled Yenshur in the future, perhaps he could try to repair it. The Divine Sea Realm cultivator of the Thousand Secrets Pavilion should be very interested in this item. The fairy doctor, who looked like Hua Si, still stood beside him with a calm expression. "What's the matter with Lu Li?" Lu Yi asked. He had basically figured out everything about the Soaring Dragon Realm. He even had some guesses about the identity of the woman beside him. But he did not dare to say, nor did he dare to ask. Some things were better left unsaid. It might not be a good thing to poke the truth. Only Yi Liuli he was not sure about. During this time in the Soaring Dragon Realm, there was a person called Yi Liuli. But after Yi Lu died in battle, Yi Liuli quietly passed away. She died silently. In the end, it was the fairy doctor who had her medicine boy bury her in the Medicine Valley. It could be said that in the history of the Soaring Dragon Realm, Yi Liuli did not play any role in changing the situation. At the very least, Yi Lu still carried the destiny of heaven and earth. He wore the dragon throne and helped the Soaring Dragon Realm cultivators win the first war against the Blood Tribe. The essence of Lu Li that you encountered. The fairy doctor pondered for a moment. It can be considered the last remaining source of heaven and earth. It is also an obsession. Heaven and earth also have obsessions. Lu Yi was surprised. Since a will is born, it will naturally produce obsessions. Lu Yi understood. So her obsession is that if the Soaring Dragon Realm had a savior-like figure back then, perhaps there would be a different future and we would not have to suffer the fate of destruction? Exactly. The fairy doctor nodded. I see. Lu Yi had thought of one thing before. The broken transmission formation that led to the Soaring Dragon Realm's secret realm was a test in the field of formations. Only the person who repaired the transmission formation was qualified to set foot in the Soaring Dragon Realm's secret realm. Because only such a person would have extremely high attainments in formations and be able to carry out the final plan of patching the heavens. Now it seemed that it was indeed so. This was also the reason why the transmission formation was located near the 100 Formation Pagoda. Those who came and went from the 100 Formation Pagoda were all formation cultivators. Only formation cultivators with extremely high attainments in formations could take on such a great responsibility. After Lu Yi repaired the transmission formation and entered the secret realm, his various performances gained the recognition of the remaining source of heaven and earth. That was why Yi Liuli gave him the source of heaven and earth on Wangyang Peak. Lu Yi did not let her down. The 64 heaven patching platforms urged the power of heaven and earth and broke away from the attachment of the blood realm. The heaven patching array had appeared, but the final result was not revealed. Because the obsessions of heaven and earth had found their own answer, the final result was no longer important. But after all, a silhouette was only a silhouette. In the real history of the Soaring Dragon Realm, there was no such person as Lu Yi. Naturally, it could not avoid the fate of destruction. But the obsessions of the will of heaven and earth had been relieved. This part of the world is yours. The fairy doctor suddenly said something shocking. Mine? Lu Yi was stunned. Even though Lu Yi felt that the connection between this world and himself had become incomparably close when he obtained the last source of heaven and earth, a world belonging to him was still something that shocked him to an unimaginable degree. Moreover, what use did he have for this broken world without any vitality? The last source of heaven and earth is in your body, so naturally it is yours. The fairy doctor smiled gently. Lu Ye's heart stirred. Is there hope for this world to recover? I don't know. Maybe it is, but it depends on how hard you work. Lu Yi suddenly understood. He still had to increase his cultivation. He was only in the Cloud River tier. Even if he really had a way to recover this world, it was not something a Cloud River tier could come into contact with. Then let's meet again if fate allows. As the fairy doctor spoke, her figure suddenly dissipated, turning into specks of light. Her departure was extremely abrupt. Lu Yi hurriedly raised his hand. How do I leave this place? How could there be any response? This inevitably made Lu Yi angry. Yi and Hu Po's figures suddenly appeared beside him. Ling and Hu Po appeared extremely flustered. Lu Yi and Yi hurriedly rushed over, grabbing Lu Ye's arm as if they were afraid they would lose him. Previously, one spirit and one tiger had clearly been observing the movements of the Great Heaven Patching Formation. In the end, in the blink of an eye, the surrounding scenery had suddenly changed. They had appeared on a barren mountain without any vitality, and there was no sign of Lu Yi anywhere. What made them even more frightened was that they could not walk out of this small mountain no matter what. Just as they were at a loss, they raised their heads and saw Lu Ye's figure. Hu Po scurried to Lu Ye's chest, using both claws to pull open Lu Ye's lapel and burrowed in. Only his eyes were exposed, vigilantly looking outside. He had never experienced such a bizarre thing. It really scared him to death. Chapter 742. On the barren mountain, Lu Yi comforted Yi with a few words, which calmed her down. With Lu Ye's explanation, she gradually understood the current situation. So, the dragon soaring realm has long been destroyed and what we experienced was just an illusion? It's not wrong to say it's an illusion. It's more like history repeating itself. Is Lioli really formed by the last will of Dragon Soaring Realm? There is a person called Yi Lioli in the history of Soaring Dragon. However, the Yi Lioli we met was different from the real her. The Lioli we met carried the last remnant of the origin of this world, and was also the will of this world that has yet to dissipate. Yi asked many more questions and Lu Yi tried his best to answer them. In the end, a complicated expression appeared on Yi's face. That's good. At least, everything you did was seen by this world. Lioli should be very happy in the end, so she gave her power to you. Ever since Yi Lioli disappeared from this world, Yi's mood hadn't been very good. Only now did she untie the knot in her heart. Lu Yi couldn't help but think of the last words Yi Lioli said on Wangyang Peak. She said that she had been waiting for a long time, and could not hold on any longer. From the looks of it, the will of this world had been holding on bitterly during the years of Dragon Ascension's destruction, all for the sake of witnessing the possibility that would appear at an unknown time. Fortunately, she saw it in the end. Putting away the many thoughts in his mind, Lu Yi turned and looked around. The trip to the Dragon Soaring Realm was over, but how to leave this place? The fairy doctor definitely knew the way to leave. Even to her, bringing him out of this ruined world was as easy as lifting a finger. But she didn't do that and instead deliberately left him here. So, the way to leave was hidden in this world. Or rather, it was hidden in the last source that Yi Lioli gave him. It seemed that he had to rely on himself. On the mountain top, wind and sand swept through, and the environment was terrible. Lu Yi led Yi and Hupa down the barren mountain, found a suitable place at the foot of the mountain, and opened up a cave to hide the wind and dust. Sitting cross-legged, Lu Yi silently sensed his own body. Ever since Yi Lioli gave him the last remnants of the origin of heaven and earth, he had been busy with the plan to mend the heavens. Occasionally he would comprehend the mysteries within, but he had never delved too deeply into it. Now that he no longer had to worry about Long Ting, he could calm down and comprehend the mysteries contained within this mysterious power. Time passed. Lu Yi sat there motionless. Even though it had been some time since he had obtained the origin source, Lu Yi couldn't tell what kind of power it was. It didn't improve its cultivation, nor did it increase the power of its spirit. It didn't even give itself more means to kill enemies and protect itself. However, Lu Yi could still feel that this power existed within his body. It was omnipresent, yet he could not activate it, see it, or touch it. And by relying on this source, his connection with the dilapidated soaring dragon realm was also incomparably close. The fairy doctor said that this world was his, and it sounded like there was nothing wrong with saying that they were here to scare people. With the origin returning to the body, the world already had a master. As he comprehended the origin energy, Lu Yi even felt that he could do anything in this world with just a thought. Of course, the premise was that the remaining power of this world could support his thoughts. So even if he felt something in his heart, he didn't rashly try anything. Because the soaring dragon realm was already dilapidated. If he rashly squeezed out its power, he was afraid that it would really fall apart. A dilapidated world was still a world. There might be some way to restore it in the future. If it really fell apart, then he would be letting down Yi Lioli's last trust. He continued to comprehend. Suddenly, he saw a ball of light that was so dark that it was almost extinguished. The last remnants of the soaring dragon realm's origin. The moment he saw this ball of light, Lu Yi knew its essence. This was the origin that Yi Lioli had given him. Even though Long Ting's current situation was right in front of him, and Lu Yi knew that the situation of its origin wouldn't be too good, when he saw the origin, Lu Yi was still shocked. The light was only like the brilliance of a firefly, flickering and almost undetectable. Perhaps the last remnants of the soaring dragon realm's origin weren't so bad, but after countless years of waiting, coupled with the continuous dilapidation of the soaring dragon realm itself, it naturally deteriorated slowly. The strength of the origin was directly related to the prosperity and desolation of the world itself. The more prosperous the world was, the stronger the origin. With Long Teng's current situation, it was already fortunate that a trace of its origin was preserved. Naturally, he couldn't ask for too much. Moreover, this origin should have been preserved by relying on the secrets of Jiuzhou. Otherwise, it would have dissipated long ago. Looking at this ball of origin, Lu Yi understood. Only at this moment could he be considered the true master of the soaring dragon realm. If the soaring dragon realm was compared to a house, then this ball of origin was the key to opening the door of this house. Lu Yi had the key in his pocket for a long time, but he couldn't take it out. Now that he could take out the key, he could naturally enter and leave this realm at will. This also meant that Lu Yi could leave this realm at any time. It's not as difficult as I thought. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. No wonder the little fairy doctor ignored him when she left. It seemed that she had long been sure that he could see through the mystery. Suddenly Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. If he could enter and exit the soaring dragon realm at will, wouldn't that mean that he would have a place to hide when he encountered any danger that was difficult to resist in the future? If that was the case, then he would need to be wary of being hunted down. When there was danger, he could hide in the soaring dragon realm and come out when there was no danger. What good could the myriad devil ridge do to him? However, he also had to be on guard against others blocking his way. Moreover, how would he know that the danger outside had passed? This was also a big problem. Maybe when he left the soaring dragon realm, he would encounter a strong enemy squatting in the same place. If such a thing really happened, then it would be troublesome. Lu Yi thought so in his heart, but he could feel that his idea might not be able to be realized. Because what he imagined was the ideal situation, there must be many things that he had not noticed at the moment. Although he had found a way to leave this realm, Lu Yi did not leave immediately. Because he had not fully recovered yet. When entering from one place to another, Lu Yi tried his best to maintain his perfect state. This was a good habit that he had cultivated all along. He had entered the soaring dragon realm from the forbidden area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. If he guessed correctly, he would return to that place after leaving the soaring dragon realm. And before that, a large group of myriad Devil Ridge cultivators had been chasing after him. After such a long time, he did not know what was going on in the forbidden area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. However, he still had to be on guard. When he was mending the sky, he had endured too much pressure. There were already some internal injuries in his body and his body had been seriously exhausted. He had not fully recovered yet. If the dragon throne was not damaged, he would not be afraid. With the dragon throne on his body, no matter how many people from the myriad Devil Ridge came, they could not do anything to him. However, the dragon throne had long been damaged in the real history. Before it was repaired, there was no way to use it to fight the enemy. As he recuperated, he observed the soaring dragon realm's origin. This kind of origin power, even if extremely weak, could not only allow him to freely enter and exit the soaring dragon realm. He wanted to pry into more mysteries from it. His mind slowly immersed in it. Lu Yi sensed his own insignificance. Even if it was a weak ball of origin power, it was still the remnant foundation of a world. It did not look very eye-catching on the outside, but for a Cloud River cultivator like Lu Yi, it was unimaginably grand inside. At this moment, Lu Yi felt like a newborn eagle that wasn't afraid of a tiger, plunging into the vast starry skies. And he was that eagle that did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. As far as his eyes could see, the sky was filled with twinkling stars. There were countless of them, more than billions of them. Some of those stars were dim, some were bright, and all of them flickered, dazzling one's eyes. And when all these lights gathered together, it was the ball of origin power that was like the brilliance of a firefly. There was actually such a grand world inside the origin power. And, what are these? Lu Yi looked at the unpredictable starlight and could not help but fall into deep thought. Although he had used the convenience of the soaring dragon realm's master to pry into the interior of this origin power, he could not figure out what these starlights were. Calmly sensing, he did not feel anything too mysterious from those starlights. Lu Yi controlled his mind and moved closer to a nearby starlight. The reason why he chose this one was naturally because this starlight was the brightest one nearby. Without any hindrance, his mind poured into that starlight. Immediately after, the world spun, his vision blurred, and a baby's clear crying sounded in his ears. There were weak moans of women, and there were also people cheering and running outside. It's born, master, madam has given birth. A boy or a girl? Congratulations, master, it's a chubby boy. Ha, the heavens have not forsaken my Qin clan finally has a descendant. Noisy voices entered his ears, making Lu Yi extremely confused. Where was this? What happened? He was clearly just prying into the starlight inside the soaring dragon realm's origin power. Why was it suddenly so chaotic? The baby's cries continued, and only then did Lu Yi realize it. He had become a baby. That's not right, he seemed to have possessed the body of a baby. He could feel the weakness and delicacy of this newborn body, but he had no way to control this body. In his current state, it was as if he was a bystander standing behind this baby, feeling everything that he could feel, seeing everything that he could see, but he could not control him. What was going on? Chapter 743. Almost as soon as Lu Ye's mind merged with the bright starlight, Yi, who was standing guard nearby, suddenly raised her head and looked at Lu Yi. It's happening again. Lu Ye's soul had disappeared again. What was left in front of her was only an empty shell that was still alive. This happened last time and she and Hoopa were shocked. Only now did she know that Lu Ye's soul had left his body and entered the secret realm of Immortal Origin City. Then what about this time? She didn't see Lu Yi use the power of the breath fruit core, so where did his soul go? Ah! Hoopa softly howled from the side. It had obviously sensed something. Don't be afraid, Lu Yi will be back soon. Rather than comforting, Hoopa's words were more like self-comforting. Fortunately, she had experienced it last time, so she wasn't surprised. Although she was nervous, she wasn't as worried as last time. In that strange scene, Lu Ye's ears were still echoing with the cries of the newborn. It made him confused and he didn't know what was going on. He had never experienced such a state before. It was as if he was leaning over the baby, feeling the same way as him, but he couldn't control him. He didn't seem to be aware of his own existence. The voice of the master outside sounded again. Leave the stars, bright the sun and moon, let's take on the word Zhao. The master of this family was surnamed Qin, and the newborn baby was named Qin Zhao. Just as this thought appeared in Lu Ye's mind, the scene before him changed again. A teenager with red lips and white teeth knelt in front of his parents and kowtowed heavily. Father, mother, this child will be leaving now. I can't be by your side to fulfill my filial piety, please take good care of yourself in the future. This teenager was Qin Zhao, who had already grown up. In front of him, a dignified woman was crying, her eyes full of reluctance. She held Qin Zhao's hand, unwilling to let go. A middle-aged man closed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry about family matters. My Qin clan has been a merchant family for generations. Although we are extremely wealthy, we are still mortals. Now that you have the talent to cultivate, you will definitely walk a different path from our ancestors. When you go out, you must abide by your heart and do not cause trouble." Qin Zhao sniffled and replied, "I will remember father's words. When my cultivation is successful, I will come back to serve father and mother." "Go." Patriarch Qin waved his hand lightly. Qin Zhao kowtowed 3 times before he got up and left. Outside the Qin manor, there was already a manservant waiting with a horse. The youth mounted the horse and from then on, he was free to fly. The scene changed again. Qin Zhao traveled all the way and finally arrived at the Law Refinement Pavilion. He participated in the Law Refinement Pavilion's disciple recruitment ceremony, passed the test, and successfully became a disciple. Since then, Qin Zhao displayed a natural talent and advantage that was difficult for his peers to reach on the path of cultivation, and it was unstoppable. Soon, he was valued by the upper echelons of the sect and nurtured with great effort. Many of the sect's secret techniques and manuals were open to him to their heart's content. However, the good times did not last long. The Law Refinement Pavilion was attacked by a rival sect and was destroyed. Qin Zhao escaped death and struggled to survive. Fortunately, his luck was not bad. He encountered an opportunity in the vast mountains and cultivated in seclusion. His cultivation increased day by day. When he reached the Spirit Sea realm and came out of seclusion, he avenged the blood of the elders of the sect. When he returned to the Qin manor, it was empty. The 2 elders of the family had passed away long ago and the family property was divided among the branches. Qin Zhao was heartbroken. He mourned in front of the graves of the 2 elders for 3 years and then founded the Law Refinement Pavilion. With his strong cultivation and great reputation, he quickly made the Law Refinement Pavilion the top sect in Soaring Dragon. He was also one of the top cultivators in Soaring Dragon. Until his lifespan was exhausted and he passed away. Scenes flickered and changed. The time period jumped without any pattern, but every change was an important point in Qin Zhao's life. Qin Zhao's magnificent and undulating life was presented completely and clearly in front of Lu Yi. And because of his special state, it was equivalent to him accompanying Qin Zhao through this life. Lu Yi also felt the many realizations Qin Zhao had during his cultivation. It was as if he was cultivating himself. Lu Yi slowly understood what he had experienced. This world, from ancient times to the present, had given birth to and perished countless living beings. The long river of history flowed. Even a sect with a long history might not be able to record things that were too ancient. Natural disasters and man-made disasters, the loss of inheritance, often led to the disappearance of many important records. People could not remember, but the world could. Every living being that had lived in this world would leave behind traces of their existence, or rather, imprints. The more powerful the living being, the more obvious the imprints left behind. Those imprints all existed in the origin of the world. That was to say, the stars in the sky that Lu Yi saw. Every bit of starlight corresponded to a certain time in the Soaring Dragon realm, a certain living being that had lived in this domain. The bright starlight that Lu Yi chose was a trace left behind by a powerful cultivator called Qin Zhao in a certain time period in the Soaring Dragon Realm. He relied on his identity as the Lord of the Soaring Dragon Realm to peek into Qin Zhao's life, and almost accompanied him through the entire process of his life. Of course, the time spent was certainly not equal to Qin Zhao's lifespan. Qin Zhao was a great cultivator of the Divine Sea Realm, and he had passed away naturally. His lifespan was at least 800 years. What Lu Yi experienced with him were some of the most important events in Qin Zhao's life. Because only these most important events that affected Qin Zhao's life could leave traces in such a long time, allowing Lu Yi to peek into them. Ordinary small things would not leave any traces. He witnessed the birth of a strong cultivator, his strength and his death with his own eyes. This touched Lu Yi greatly. If it was just this, it would not do him any good. The key was that when he possessed Qin Zhao's body in that special state, he could feel everything he felt. In other words, if Qin Zhao had any special insights in cultivation, Lu Yi could also clearly see it. If he cultivated any secret techniques, Lu Yi could also smoothly master them. This was a great value. In this way, Lu Yi could effortlessly follow Qin Zhao to cultivate all the things he had mastered, such as the various secrets of the Refining Law Pavilion. And this was just Qin Zhao. Since ancient times, how many heroes had been born in the Soaring Dragon Realm? Inside the magnificent origin, there were endless stars twinkling. The brightness was not inferior to Qin Zhao's, and there were even many people who surpassed him. This was clearly a treasure trove that could be excavated at any time, a treasure trove that contained the essence of the entire Soaring Dragon Realm from all eras. Realizing this, Lu Ye's heart became excited. Yilioli's gift seemed to be much more valuable than he had imagined. What he had obtained was definitely not just a dim origin of heaven and earth. The only thing that Lu Yi felt was a pity was that according to the division of cultivation schools in the 9 provinces, Qin Zhao was considered a spell cultivator, so even if Lu Yi had some gains this time, it would not be of much help to him. After all, he was a weapon cultivator who used the saber, and the spell cultivator could only be regarded as one of the schools that he cultivated on the side, and he had not put much effort into it. So far, the spells that he could perform were the Fire Phoenix and Fire Dragon, plus a few spiritual inscriptions on the talent tree. However, in the Soaring Dragon Realm's many years of history, there was definitely no shortage of powerful weapon cultivators who used the saber. If he could find the traces left behind by them and comprehend the mysteries within, it would be much more useful than comprehending any saber cultivation experience. Those saber masters themselves were living saber cultivation experiences. Wouldn't their hands-on teaching be better than observing the words left behind? Moreover, because it was the first time he had experienced such a thing, Lu Yi only watched from the sidelines as the scenes rapidly changed, and did not interfere in any way. However, he could feel that to a certain extent he could interfere with the flow of those scenes, and even make the scenes directly move forward or backward to a special time period. For example, when Qin Zhao cultivated a certain secret technique, if the time period was pushed to this time period, then Lu Yi could cultivate with Qin Zhao, and he could cultivate to whatever extent Qin Zhao could cultivate to. As all kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, Lu Yi suddenly felt a great exhaustion sweeping over him. This was because the mental exhaustion was too great. He suddenly realized that doing this kind of thing also required him to consume some of his energy. It was understandable. Even if he was the master of the Soaring Dragon Realm, even if the origin was hidden in his body, if he wanted to get something he would have to pay something. It was time to leave. With a thought, Lu Ye's mind quickly separated from Qin Zhao's body and shuttled through the vast starry sky. Many bright and dim starlights flickered in his field of vision. The next moment, Lu Yi sensed the existence of his physical body. Lu Yi! Yi's shout came into his ears. Lu Yi opened his eyes, and there was a faint look of fatigue in his eyes. After a little perception, he found that the situation was still okay. Although the mental exhaustion was serious, it was not to the extent of exhaustion. How long has it been? Lu Yi asked. In the process of possessing Qin Zhao, although he had accompanied him through the entire course of his life, he could feel that not much time had passed. Almost 2 days, Yi replied. The last time Lu Yi entered the Immortal Essence City, he was silent for 7 or 8 days. This time he woke up after only 2 days, so Yi was not too flustered. What happened? Lu Yi slowly shook his head. It's a little complicated. I'll tell you later. The situation was a little awkward. Originally he wanted to recover completely and leave the dead Soaring Dragon Realm, but he did not expect to be mentally exhausted and have to continue to recover. However, for Lu Yi, the recovery of the power of the mind was much easier than spiritual power. because he had soul water in his hands. Swallowing soul water for a long time was of great benefit to the growth of one's soul. This was also the reason why Lu Ye's soul was far superior to cultivators of the same level. Therefore, even if soul water was extremely valuable and rare, he would never be stingy in this kind of thing. No matter how good something was, it would only show its value when used at the right time. Blindly collecting it would not bring any benefits to oneself. Chapter 744. After swallowing a drop of soul water, Lu Yi completely recovered in less than half an hour. He slowly got up and called out to Yi and Hupa. Then he looked at the ruined dragon soaring realm. It was time to go. With a thought, ripples appeared in the void in front of him. Vaguely, a familiar aura spread out from the ripples. It was the aura of the Cloud River battlefield. What surprised Lu Yi was that he could see the situation outside through the layers of ripples. It was like a reflection on the water. What he saw was indeed the forbidden area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. It was the teleportation array that he had used to enter the dragon soaring realm. However, there were many figures sitting near the teleportation array. At a glance, there were at least a few hundred people. He saw a few familiar faces among them. Xia Liang, Tan Sheng, and Chu Yun and Zhou Pei from the Sacred Fire sect who had chased him out of the Tianji city. These people surrounded the altar so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. He was afraid that once he showed himself, he would be attacked like a storm. Thieves will not give up on their desire to kill me. The thing that he was most worried about had happened. After all, the dragon soaring realm was only a mystery realm. Lu Yi also knew that he would leave this place sooner or later. Whether the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge would wait for him outside was also something that he had been worried about. Now, it seemed that he was right to be worried. He was really surrounded. Lu Ye's expression was cold. Moreover, how long had it been? He had stayed in the dragon soaring realm for at least 1.5 months. After such a long time, these people, they actually had the patience to wait here? Although he was angry, he also found it funny. He naturally understood that this was because of wealth. The bounty on his head was too big and he was only a Cloud River realm cultivator. No matter whether they had a grudge against him, as long as the opportunity was right, they would naturally want to get a share of it. What made Lu Yi feel slightly relieved was that he could see the situation outside. The people outside seemed to be unable to see him, so the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge did not have any abnormal reactions. However, there were a few people who seemed to be array cultivators who were studying the damaged teleportation array on the altar. It seemed that they wanted to repair the array. Unfortunately, with their array Dao attainments, it was naturally impossible. In this situation, if he rushed out rashly, the situation would not be good. However, if he did not go out, could it be that he could continue to hide in the soaring dragon realm? From the looks of it, the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators didn't seem like they were going to leave anytime soon. It was not impossible. Although the soaring dragon realm was in ruins, it would not affect his cultivation by consuming elixirs. With such thoughts in mind, he suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure amidst the crowd. Wuxia. She had actually come to the Cloud River battlefield. However, this was normal. Wuxia had long been qualified to become a Yunhe. The only reason she had not been promoted was because the environment of the Forest of 1,000 Poisons was too suitable for her cultivation. Thus, she had remained there to refine the power of the Forest of 1,000 Poisons. The last time he went to see her, the size of the Forest of 1,000 Poisons had been greatly reduced. After such a long time, the poison source in the Forest of 1,000 Poisons had probably been completely refined by her. Naturally, it was time for her to advance to the Cloud River realm. It was obviously not a coincidence that she would appear here. She must have heard some news about him. But looking at her current state, why, it seems like, was he captured? He did not encounter any harsh treatment. In the 9 prefectures, the cultivators of the 2 camps were at odds with each other. However, they had always maintained a tolerant attitude towards medical cultivators. Even if a medical cultivator was captured by an enemy, they would not kill him. They would even let the medical cultivator's family and friends pay some money to redeem him or her. This was also a treatment that only medical cultivators could enjoy. After all, everyone would ask medical cultivators for help. Moreover, there were not many medical cultivators in the 9 prefectures. If they really killed everyone they captured, it would not take many years for all the medical cultivators of the 2 camps to die out. At this moment, Wuxia was treating someone's injuries. Her body was surging with a green light that was full of vitality. Looking at the Myriad Devil Ridge and the surrounding terrain, Lu Yi gradually understood that a battle had broken out here. Outside the altar, the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were restless. Sitting upright, Xiao Yang's gaze was even gloomier. 1.5 months ago, Lu Ye had walked out of the 100 Formation Pagoda. He, Tanxing, Chu Yun, Zhou Pei and the others had all attacked together. In the end, they had not only failed to kill Lu Ye, but he had also escaped into the forbidden area and disappeared without a trace. After that, he had called upon the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge to work together to break the formations of the forbidden area. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they were determined to find Lu Ye. There were many powerful formations in the forbidden area. Normally, the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were not willing to trespass. However, when they learned that they were looking for Lu Ye, the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge became interested. Working together, their progress was not slow. The formations that had been preserved for many years were broken one by one until they found the altar with a damaged teleportation formation. A strange altar had suddenly appeared in such a place. Obviously, it contained some kind of opportunity. After the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge checked, they confirmed that the formation on the altar had been activated recently. In the entire Cloud River battlefield, who else could repair a damaged teleportation formation and activate it besides Lu Ye? Therefore, Xiao Yang and the others immediately concluded that the person who had activated the teleportation formation must be Lu Ye. As for where he had gone, no one knew. The place that such an altar was connected to must be a mystic realm. Lu Ye, who had a huge bounty on his head, or a mystic realm that contained an unknown opportunity. No matter which one it was, it could arouse the enthusiasm of the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge. Therefore, the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge had been trying to repair the teleportation formation these days. Unfortunately, there was little progress. The actions of the Myriad Devil Ridge naturally could not be hidden from the cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance. When the news spread, many people from the Grand Heaven Alliance came to investigate. However, under the leadership of Xiao Yang, Tan Xing and the others, all the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were killed. The cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance who had come to covet the ship were defeated. Regardless of Lu Ye, the Myriad Devil Ridge was not willing to let the Grand Heaven Alliance touch the opportunity hidden in the altar. In the past month or so, the cultivators of the two sides had clashed several times. Fortunately, both sides restrained themselves and there were not many casualties. This was also the reason why Hua Xi was in the captive room and treated the injuries of the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators. She had entered the Cloud River battlefield a month ago. As soon as she heard that something had happened to Lu Ye, she rushed here. Brother Xia, people's hearts are unstable. They probably won't be able to hold on for long. Tan Xing walked to Xiao Yang's side and said softly. They hadn't seen Lu Ye for a month and a half, and there was no improvement in the repair of the array formation. Many of the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators gathered here had already lost their patience. If they had the time, they might as well stroll around the Cloud River battlefield. Who knew, they might encounter a heaven-bestowed spirit lot or some other opportunity. The Cloud River battlefield did not lack all kinds of opportunities. Lu Ye only saw a few hundred people gathered here. Before this, there were more than a few thousand cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge gathered here. There were only a few left because most people had lost their patience and left. If there was no further progress, the remaining few hundred people would probably disperse one after another. Mediocre people are not worthy of discussion. Don't bother with them. Xiao Yang snorted. If they didn't have the patience, what qualifications did they have to covet the huge bounty on Lu Ye's head? In order to kill Lu Ye, he had forcibly delayed his breakthrough to the True Lake realm. In the past few months, his cultivation had stagnated. Killing Lu Ye then Li Baxin had become his obsession. Because he could feel that he did not have many chances to kill Lu Ye. Lu Ye's cultivation was advancing at a godly speed. When he was in the hunting ground, Lu Ye was chased to a dead end. In the end, he was forced to use the golden body token to summon the Heaven's Fate Pillar to escape. After that, Xiao Yang and Tan Xing went to the returning Sky Valley Spirit Land together. Lu Ye used the power of the Spirit Array to defeat them and even killed Wei Quebec. Every time Xiao Yang saw Lu Ye's strength would skyrocket. Last time, when he came out of the 100 Formation Tower, he was able to survive the joint attack of 4 Ninth Order Cloud River Realm cultivators. With such a terrifying growth rate, if Xiao Yang did not take the opportunity to kill Lu Ye, he would not have the chance to do so. Therefore, even if he did not break through to the True Lake realm, he had to kill Lu Ye first. Only with Lu Ye dead could he boldly attack the returning Sky Valley Spirit Land, kill Li Baxin, and avenge Yanxing Chu Yun and Zhou Pei won't leave, Xiao Yang said again when he saw that Tan Xing was still a little worried. The people of Sacred Flame sect were very stubborn. Since these two had set their eyes on Lu Ye, they would not give up, not to mention the great grievances between Sacred Flame sect and Blue Blood sect. Tan Xing nodded. As long as Chu Yun and Zhou Pei did not leave, the four of them would not have to worry too much. If the others really wanted to leave, they could not force them to stay. 50 kilometers away from the broken transmission array altar, Li Baxian, Feng Yuchan, and Zhu Jiao were quietly hiding. If Hua Xi could get the news and come here, they could naturally get the news as well. However, the enemy outnumbered them and the three of them could not do anything. Moreover, Li Baxian did not dare to show up rashly. Otherwise, if Xiao Liang found out, he would most likely be targeted. At that time, not only would he fail to save the others, he would also be implicated. What did that junior sister Hua Xi say? Feng Yuchan asked. Feng Yuchan looked at Li Baxian and asked. Thinking of that junior sister Hua Xi, Feng Yuchan could not help but admire her. Although Hua Xi was only a medical cultivator, she would not be captured so easily. The cultivators of Grand Sky Alliance had charged into the formation several times, but not a single one was captured alive. Only Hua Xi. This was not because she was stupid but because she did it on purpose. Even if she had the identity of a medical cultivator as a guarantee, her actions were too bold. Who would have thought that such a gentle person would have such unexpected methods? Everything is under control. Li Baxian replied with a strange expression. Of course, this wasn't his idea but rather Hua Xi's. Junior sister Hua Xi told us not to act blindly without thinking. If junior brother really did appear from that side, she would lend a hand. Feng Yuchan did not understand. But what method does this junior sister have to save someone from so many myriad demons ridge cultivators? Li Baxian shook his head, indicating that he did not know. He also did not understand where Hua Xi's confidence came from. Chapter 745. In the Soaring Dragon Realm, the moment Lu Yi saw Hua Xi through the reflection on the water surface, his heart was set. Today's matter was settled. Originally, he was still hesitating whether to stay in the Soaring Dragon Realm to cultivate for a while and leave after the Wanmo Ridge cultivators outside had mostly dispersed. Now there was no need for that. With a thought, the water-like ripples in front of him suddenly became more real. On the altar where the broken transmission array remained, several Wanmo Ridge formation cultivators were studying how to repair the transmission array in front of them. Suddenly there was a change. The void above the altar was like the calm surface of a lake that had a stone thrown into it. Inexplicable ripples appeared. The formation cultivators were all startled. One of them said, "Brother Yuan, what did you do?" The formation cultivator called Brother Yuan was confused. "I didn't do anything. I was just trying to see if I could directly activate this array without repairing it." Who knew that it would actually work? The formation cultivators were all overjoyed. If they had known this would happen, why would they repair it? Just as they were thinking this, a figure suddenly appeared in the ripples. The array cultivators were all stunned by what they saw. When there was an abnormality here, the nearby Wanmo Ridge cultivators also noticed it. Therefore, the moment the figure appeared, someone was overjoyed and exclaimed, "Lu Ye!" Vaguely, through the ripple-like reflection, they saw Lu Ye's figure and saw a broken and lifeless world that seemed to be heading toward destruction. Those with sharp eyes and nimble hands, the moment they recognized Lu Yi, had already activated their imperial equipment and techniques to attack. Obviously, they wanted to gain the upper hand by making the first move. However, all the attacks passed through Lu Ye's figure without causing the slightest bit of damage to him. More Wanmo Ridge cultivators gathered from all directions, and the scene became chaotic for a moment. In the crowd, Xiao Liang, Tan Xing, and the others stared at Lu Ye's reflection. With their eyesight they could not see what was going on with Lu Yi. They only vaguely felt that this reflection was not real, so even if they attacked it, it would be meaningless. However, they had waited here bitterly for a month and a half. Now that things had finally taken a turn for the better, they were naturally excited. This time, no matter what, he had to kill Lu Yi. He couldn't let him escape again. You. On the other side of the crowd, a Wanmo Ridge cultivator stared blankly at the gentle woman in front of him. For some reason, he suddenly felt that this medical cultivator from the Haotian Alliance had a charming smile. "I'm sorry." The woman's voice was as gentle as water, and the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were being treated by her were confused. Then he saw an unbelievable scene. A layer of dark green light gushed out from the gentle woman's delicate body. In an instant, it turned into a thick green fog that swept out in all directions. From the moment the green mist appeared to the moment it spread, only a single breath had passed, and at this moment, almost everyone's attention was attracted by Lu Ye's reflection, so no one noticed this change. The dark green mist instantly enveloped an area of several hundred meters. At the same time, on the ground where Wuxia had walked past, huge colorful mushrooms suddenly appeared out of thin air. They grew from nothing, from small to large, at an extremely fast speed. "What is this?" Exclamations sounded. "Oh no, it's poisonous. The goddamn Haotian alliance poisoned us. Get out!" Exclamations rose one after another. The scene that was originally chaotic because of Lu Ye's sudden appearance became even more chaotic. Figures rushed into the sky and quickly left the area covered by the poisonous mist. Even so, these cultivators felt an unbearable itch on their bodies, as if countless insects were wriggling in their flesh. What made them even more alarmed was that the flow of spiritual power in their bodies had become stagnant. The myriad demon-ridge cultivators reacted quickly in the face of such a change. In just 3 breaths of time, almost everyone had rushed out. Only Xia Liang, Tan Xing, and a few others stayed in front of the altar. It was not that they were immune to poison, but the sudden appearance of the poisonous fog was not something they could easily resist. Coupled with the explosive powder from the strange mushrooms, the longer they stayed here, the worse their situation would become. But Xia Liang clearly saw that Lu Ye's figure had just appeared and seemed to be about to walk out when such a strange change occurred. It was obvious that someone was working with Lu Ye to escape this place. So he was unwilling to retreat like this. After failing to kill Lu Ye several times, he was about to lose his patience. Inside the poisonous mist, he stared at the light curtain like a reflection, looking at Lu Ye, who seemed to be in another space. He thought that the other party couldn't see him, but he didn't expect Lu Ye to raise his eyes and look directly into his eyes, revealing a provocative smile. "Bastard." Xia Liang was furious. He could see Lu Ye, but Lu Ye could see him too. "Brother Xia, it's time to go." Tan Xing's face was green. After staying in this thick green mist for less than 10 breaths, he only felt that his strength had been suppressed by about 30%. If he continued to stay, the situation would be even worse. He didn't know if he would be poisoned to death, but if Lu Ye rushed out, he might not be able to stop him in his current state. Saying this without waiting for Xia Liang's agreement, he grabbed him and rushed into the sky. Xia Liang roared. Hatred. Monstrous hatred. The opportunity was clearly in front of him, and he could have killed Lu Ye this time, so why did such a change happen? Who was it that did this in the dark? Almost at the same time that Xia Liang and Tan Xing left, Lu Ye also took a step forward. One step was the difference between realms. He felt a little regretful in his heart. It seemed that his plan to hide in the soaring dragon realm when he encountered danger would not work. This was because he realized that if he really wanted to walk out of the soaring dragon realm, there would be a slight delay. Even though this process would only take 3 to 5 breaths, to a powerful cultivator, 3 to 5 breaths of time was too much of a variable. And this was just walking out. What would it be like when he hid in the soaring dragon realm with the help of the soaring dragon realm's origin? He would have to try it himself in the future to know. A familiar aura rushed towards him. Previously, he had been active in the Cloudy River battlefield and didn't pay much attention to such an aura. However, after experiencing the deathly silence of the soaring dragon realm, he realized the beauty of the Cloudy River battlefield. It was full of vitality and vitality. The reflection behind him quickly disappeared. Without hesitation, Lu Ye immediately activated wind travel and rushed towards the direction in his memory. In that direction, Wuxia stood quietly in the thick mist. Beside her was a myriad demon-ridge cultivator, who looked as if he was sleeping, his expression calm. Suddenly, she raised her eyes and looked forward. Although she couldn't see anything, she could clearly sense that there was an unbelievably strong vitality rapidly approaching her. So powerful? Wuxia's face was filled with surprise. As a medical cultivator, for the time being, she was more sensitive to things like vitality than other cultivators. The last time Lu Ye went to visit her in the Forest of 1,000 Poisons, her vitality was strong, but not to this extent. This kind of vitality, she had only seen it in Shui Yuan. In other words, in terms of vitality, Lu Ye, who was now in the Cloudy River realm, was almost on par with Shui Yuan, who had reached the Divine Ocean realm. This was, without a doubt, an inconceivable thing. If she wasn't sure that the vitality was Lu Ye's, Wuxia would have thought that the person rushing towards her was someone else. However, she didn't know that nearly a month ago, Lu Ye's origin was still in deficit. She looked withered and almost died in the soaring dragon realm. Now this huge vitality was all brought by the soaring dragon realm's origin. Even if there was only a trace of the soaring dragon realm's origin left, it was still the origin of a realm. Compared to an individual like a cultivator, it was still incomparably huge. It was like the sea that was about to dry up. The benefits that the seawater could bring to Lu Ye's small pond were not as simple as bringing him back from the dead. A strong wind blew, and Wuxia felt herself being hugged by the waist. A familiar voice sounded in her ears. "Hold me tight." The tone was resolute and unquestionable. There was a faint trace of dominance that was difficult to refuse. Wuxia couldn't help but open her arms and hug the man in front of her. Whoosh, fire-red spiritual power flowed out and spread out behind Lu Yi, turning into a pair of wings. On the wings, mysterious patterns flashed with light, supporting him with the wind. Enemies surrounded him from all directions. Now that he was in danger, with a soft and warm body in his arms and a familiar body fragrance lingering at the tip of his nose, Lu Ye's state of mind immediately calmed down. Lowering his head and looking into Huaxi's eyes, Lu Yi smiled slightly. "Let's go." Huaxi was stunned by his smile for a moment. Before she could react, she had already rushed forward at an extremely fast speed. That speed was something she had never experienced before. She couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, "Boom!" In the thick green fog, there was a figure bursting with chi. Rushing out, the fiery red wings on his back flapped, creating a hole in the viscous fog. Lu Yi, a cultivator from the Myriad Demon's Ridge, saw this scene and immediately shouted. In the direction in front of Lu Yi, there were more than 10 people scattered around, all of them ready for battle. Seeing that Lu Yi was actually rushing towards them, they were all overjoyed and urged their bodies to meet him. Clang! The Pan-Shan saber was unsheathed. Lu Yi held Huaxi's soft and boneless waist with one hand and hugged her tightly. His strength was so great that Huaxi felt as if she was going to melt into his body. With one hand holding the saber, he was like a ferocious beast that had just escaped from a cage. His entire body was wrapped in a boundless, ferocious and violent aura. "Those who block me die." The long saber cut through the void. The saber flashed and screams rang out. The cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge who were facing Lu Yi fell down like raindrops. Chapter 746. High up in the sky, a fiery red stream of light flashed like a bolt of red lightning. Behind it, a large number of streams of light chased after it with surging murderous intent. Leading them were Xiaoliang, Tan Sheng and the others. Looking at Lu Ye's figure in the distance, Xiaoliang's heart was filled with murderous intent, but he also felt a trace of relief because he noticed that compared to a month and a half ago, Lu Ye's spirit energy fluctuations had not changed much. In other words, his cultivation had not increased much. This made Xiaoliang breathe a sigh of relief. For a long time, Lu Ye's growth rate had given him a sense of horror. Others might not have made much progress in a month and a half, but Lu Yi was different. Now that he saw that Lu Yi was still a 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, Xiaoliang was naturally relieved. But soon he found that the situation was not quite right. Lu Yi's cultivation had not made much progress, but his speed seemed to be much faster than before. Because the speed Lu Yi showed at this moment was almost the same as last time. But last time he was alone and this time he was holding a person in his arms, so the difference was naturally not the same. Moreover, all of them had been poisoned, and the flow of spirit energy in their bodies had stagnated, causing their strength to drop. As a result, even if these pursuers tried their best, they could not close the distance between them and Lu Yi, and were even slowly being shaken off. Damn it! How could a 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator fly so fast? Is that flying wing tattoo really so powerful? They had no advantage in speed, so the only thing they could count on now was to compete with Lu Yi in terms of spirit energy, hoping that Lu Yi would exhaust himself and not be able to maintain this speed. The cultivators of the Myriad Demon's Ridge were quickly reporting Lu Ye's current location and the direction he was heading in. From time to time, someone would jump out from the front to stop him. This forced Lu Yi to constantly change his direction, and as a result, it became more and more difficult to completely shake off his pursuers. Fortunately, his goal was not to shake off these pursuers. While he was trying his best to escape, Huaxi and Yi were chatting in his arms. Yi did not show up, but she could communicate with others through Hu Po's body. He had not seen Huaxi for a long time. Now that he saw her again, he naturally felt very close to her. In particular, in the Soaring Dragon Mystery Realm, she had seen a little fairy doctor who looked exactly like Huaxi. However, in comparison, the little fairy doctor was much more mature than the current Huaxi. Yi told her about the Soaring Dragon Realm, and Huaxi listened with great interest. When Yi finished, she asked, "So, who is the little fairy doctor?" Just as Lu Yi did not believe that the two domains had the same appearance, the same voice, the same temperament, and even the same cultivation sect, Huaxi also keenly sensed that there was a huge problem with the little fairy doctor. "I don't know. You have to ask Lu Yi." In the end, the fairy doctor said something to Lu Yi alone. Alone? Huaxi glanced at Lu Yi faintly, but saw that he was concentrating on flying in the air, so she didn't dare to disturb him. Huaxi was startled. "I forgot to inform fourth senior brother and the others." "Fourth senior brother?" Lu Yi frowned. "What happened to fourth senior brother and the others?" As Huaxi replied to the message, she said, "It's all because fourth senior brother and the others heard that you were trapped here that they rushed over. But what can they do if they're alone? They were repelled by the myriad Devil Ridge several times. They have been waiting for your news." Lu Ye's heart warmed. In the end he could rely on his own family. When they heard that he was trapped, fourth senior brother and the others came over. Huaxi also came over. Moreover, she was in danger and was in the enemy's formation. This time, if Huaxi had not cooperated with him and helped him, he was afraid that he would really have to hide in the Soaring Dragon realm for a while. "Tell fourth senior brother to tell them to return to Huitian Valley. I'm fine here." "Okay." On the other side, Li Baxin finished checking the message from Huaxi. His brows that had been tightly knitted for many days finally relaxed. He let out a long breath. "Little junior brother is free." Feng Yuechan was surprised. "Really?" Not long ago Huaxi had sent a message saying that everything was under control. How long had it been? She had actually helped Lu Yi out. Just what kind of shocking technique did this junior sister Huaxi use to be able to accomplish such an inconceivable thing? One had to know that there were several hundred myriad Demon Ridge cultivators gathered there, and there was no lack of Ninth Order Cloud River Realm Masters among them. "Little junior brother told us to return to Huitian Valley first." Li Baxin stood up and said, "Let's go." Lu Yi had already escaped, so there was no point in them staying here any longer. Instead of wasting time here, they might as well go back and cultivate diligently. Only when their cultivation was high enough would they not be so powerless the next time something like this happened. A sword light swept across the sky and the three figures quickly left. As they fled, more and more myriad Devil Ridge cultivators were left behind. Even Xiao Liang, Tan Xing and the others could not hold on any longer. It was not because they had consumed too much spirit energy, but because they were afraid of the poison that had invaded their bodies. Although the poison was not fatal, it made their spirit energy stagnate and affected their performance. If they did not resolve it in time, it was very likely that it would leave behind hidden dangers. But even if they took antidote pills, it did not have much effect. In this situation they could only seek medical treatment. Therefore, after chasing Lu Yi for 2 hours, the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who had chased him out of the 100 Formation Pagoda had disappeared. Only a few people who had killed their way out were still chasing after Lu Yi. But under such a hasty alliance, how meticulous could the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators be? Every time they were about to form an encirclement, Lu Yi would kill his way out and escape. After another 2 hours, a city appeared in the distance. They had arrived at the nearby Heaven's Secret City. This was also Lu Ye's initial goal. If there was an absolutely safe place in the Cloud River battlefield, it was undoubtedly the Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance. Therefore, when being chased by an unrivaled enemy, the best way was to escape to the Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance. As long as they hid in the Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance, no matter how strong the enemy was, they would not be able to do anything to them. Moreover, the Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance had the Heaven's Secret Pillar, so they could use it to return to the 9 states at any time. Since ancient times, countless cultivators of the 9 states had relied on this method to preserve their lives. At this moment, 10 kilometers outside of Heaven's Secret City, a group of figures appeared in the sky. They were all myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who had received the news. There were not many of them, but there were also quite a few of them. Although there were no 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators, there were several 8th Order cultivators. This group of people waited here nervously and apprehensively, constantly receiving news from various places. Because from Lu Ye's escape route, he was heading straight for this Heaven's Secret City. Therefore, their goal was very simple, and that was to stop Lu Yi before he rushed into Heaven's Secret City. "He's here." A low shout sounded. Many of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were waiting here raised their heads and saw a stream of light flying towards them at an extremely fast speed. The flame-like color matched the information they had received. Who else could it be but Lu Yi? The group of myriad Devil Ridge cultivators immediately became excited. Each of them rubbed their palms together, and imperial artifacts floated in front of them as they secretly prepared their techniques. So fast! Another person exclaimed. Because at a glance, the fiery red stream of light was ridiculously fast. It was almost equivalent to the speed of a ninth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator flying at full speed. Moreover, according to the information they received, Lu Yi had a woman with him. If he could fly so fast while carrying a person, it was likely that he would be even faster if he was alone. With such speed, unless it was a ninth-order sword cultivator, no one could catch up to him. No wonder so many famous masters had failed. Even sword cultivators could only chase after him for a short period of time. After a long time, they would definitely not be able to hold on. However, Lu Yi had escaped from the 100 Formation Pagoda and had flown for several hours. How could this guy's spirit energy reserves be so terrifying? Lu Yi's own spirit energy reserves were naturally not enough to support such a long flight. At this moment, the spirit energy in his storage ring was almost exhausted. Fortunately, the Heaven's Fate City was right in front of him. He only needed to solve the problem in front of him. Facing the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators, Lu Yi did not dodge. Like a meteor falling from the sky, he crashed straight ahead. How dare you! Someone roared and attacked. As his spirit energy surged, a technique was formed and blasted towards Lu Yi. As if it was a signal, at the same time that this spell was released, even more spells and imperial equipment turned into colorful lights, covering the sky and covering the earth as they went up to meet the spell. With such a dense attack, even a ninth-order cultivator would not be able to face it head-on. Hua Xi's breathing visibly stagnated in Lu Yi's arms, and she hugged Lu Yi even harder. She raised her head to look at Lu Yi's face, but she didn't see any panic in Lu Yi's eyes. There was only steadiness in Lu Yi's calm eyes. Hua Xi's heart also calmed down. Lu Yi slowly raised the long saber in his hand and held it horizontally in front of him. The spirit energy and vitality in his body boiled at this moment. Hua Xi's breasts contracted. At this moment she actually felt a tingling sensation on her skin. It was as if she was not hugging a person but a saber. A peerless saber that had appeared out of nowhere. A wild, overbearing and aggressive aura suddenly filled the air. In front of this aura, Hua Xi felt like a blade of grass being blown by a storm, her mind swaying unsteadily. In a hurry she heard a low murmur from Lu Yi's mouth. Stars. His spirit energy surged and Lu Yi's saber-wielding right arm bulged. In an instant the long saber slowly stabbed out. What seemed like a straight stab was actually a series of stabs. The attacks were blocked one after another, causing explosions to ring out. However, this was not the end. When the fiery red saber light blocked all of the incoming attacks and once again bloomed with light, all of the myriad Demon Ridge cultivators in front of it felt as if they were hallucinating. Chapter 747. Before cultivating the Tyrant Saber art, Lu Yi's understanding of saber techniques was very limited because no one had ever guided him in this area. Everything he learned was almost all by himself. Limited by experience and knowledge, his saber techniques stopped at the level of technique. The saber techniques he used, whether it was the self-created combo slash or the one flash, were only techniques used against enemies. They were far from reaching the level of technique. But after obtaining the secret manual of the Tyrant Saber art and seeing the real Tyrant Saber art in the mysterious space of the secret manual, he deeply understood his shortcomings. The Starry Sky Saber technique was the only saber technique he could use now. Although it was not perfect and was far from the power of the saber technique he saw in the mysterious space of the secret manual, it was enough to deal with the enemy in front of him who was also only in the Cloud River realm. This saber technique already had a trace of saber intent. The essence of the Tyrant Saber technique was that it was domineering and unparalleled. Even if there were millions of enemies, it would still go forward. Under the saber technique, there were bursts of exclamations. Many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators seemed to have seen something shocking. The terrifying scene made them all pale with fright. In this instant of confrontation, their minds were already taken away. All they could see was the saber technique that was like stars in the sky. When blood splattered, Lu Yi had already broken through the formation of many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators. Several bodies screamed behind him and fell down. The myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who were lucky enough to survive came back to their senses. All of them broke out in a cold sweat. No one could figure out what had just happened. They were the ones who had set up the defensive line here, but somehow it was broken through by Lu Yi. Moreover, several of the dozens of people had died. When they looked back, they saw that the fiery red stream of light had already swept into heaven's secret city. In the blink of an eye, it rushed into the most eye-catching building in the city. Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance. They had failed. Looking at this scene, the myriad Demon Ridge cultivators had complicated expressions. They lamented that the huge bounty had missed them, but also rejoiced that they had luckily survived the saber technique. No one had expected that a 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator could use such a mysterious saber technique. Saber intent. Some of the surviving cultivators of the Wanmo Ridge were deep in thought and were incomparably shocked. That Lu Yi's blade technique has already touched upon the level of blade will. Everyone recalled the scene of their minds being seized just now. How could they not understand that this person was right? Everyone was shocked. In the Spirit Stream tier and Cloud River tier, cultivators cultivated to raise their own cultivation level and increase their own strength. However, something as mysterious as will and technique was not something that they could touch now. Even in those first-grade sects with long histories, there were only a few who were qualified to touch these things. Lu Yi, with his 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivation, was able to display his own saber technique, which was simply shocking. How could they possibly kill such a character with a lineup that didn't even have a 9th-order master? Within the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, Lu Yi brazenly rushed in with Wuxia. In an instant, many pairs of eyes in the hall were focused on them. Countless people looked surprised and doubtful. At the same time, Lu Yi also felt several dark and sharp auras lock onto him. He knew that this was an expert from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. No one was allowed to act presumptuously in the Tianji Business Alliance, and no one was allowed to fight here. After witnessing the power of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance with his own eyes, Lu Yi naturally didn't think that the elites guarding this place were only at the Cloud River tier. Who knew they might suddenly reveal the strength of a true Lake Realm cultivator. Lightly shaking off the blood on his saber, Lu Yi sheathed his saber and slowly retracted his burgeoning vitality. Only then did the auras that locked onto him slowly dissipate. Honored guest. A steward walked up and looked at Lu Yi helplessly. Give me a guest room. Lu Yi ordered. Honored guest, please wait a moment. The steward said and raised his hand to touch his battlefield mark. Obviously he was consulting someone. After a moment he gestured to Lu Yi, honored guest, this way please. He followed the steward to the 3rd floor and entered the guest room. After paying the 10 days' rent he closed the door. Hoopa jumped down from Lu Yi's shoulder and shook his body. He also flashed out of Hoopo's body. Just as she was about to catch up with Wuxia, Lu Yi suddenly turned around and glared at Wuxia. You're too bold. His tone was unprecedentedly harsh and his expression was somewhat fierce. Yi immediately swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth and looked at Lu Yi in surprise. She didn't know why he was suddenly angry. He was fine on the road just now. Wuxia looked at Lu Yi in confusion. What? Who told you to take the risk alone? You're a medical cultivator and you dare to go in with hundreds of Wanmo Ridge cultivators? Lu Yi reprimanded with a straight face. Although Lu Yi had seen Huaxi's figure in the soaring dragon realm and knew that he would be able to escape safely with her around, at that time, he had actually been scared out of his wits. Cultivators came in all shapes and sizes. Although medical cultivators had an advantage that cultivators of other sects couldn't reach, who knew if any of the Wanmo Ridge cultivators had evil intentions towards Wuxia? If such a thing really happened, who could save Wuxia in that kind of situation? Are you worried about me? Wuxia looked into Lu Yi's eyes and her long eyelashes fluttered twice. Nonsense. Lu Yi admitted without hesitation. Have you ever thought about what if something happened to you? Wuxia pursed her lips and chuckled. How could something happen to me? I have confidence. During the days when she was a captive, she didn't just treat the injuries of the Wanmo Ridge cultivators. Her methods were really unpredictable. Even Xia Liang and the others didn't notice. What kind of evil intentions could a beautiful and gentle medical cultivator have? You're a medical cultivator who just advanced to Yunhe not long ago. How can you be so confident? How can you be so sure? How can you be so sure that those people won't hurt you? Wuxia looked at Lu Yi with interest. After knowing him for so long, this was the first time she saw Lu Yi so flustered and exasperated. So although Lu Yi's tone was fierce, she clicked her tongue and teased, look at this person's face when he treats his savior. Didn't dare to say anything. She only shrank in the corner with Hoopa. Hu Ling looked over weakly. What savior? Lu Yi was furious. Don't think that I can't escape. I only chose to show myself because I saw you over there. If he didn't see Wuxia, he really would have stayed in the dragon soaring realm for a while. At the very least, he had to wait until the cultivators of the Wanmo Ridge were almost gone before leaving. Wuxia suddenly cried as if she had been greatly wronged. I saved your life. It's fine if you don't repay me with your body, but you're so fierce to me. Speak properly. Lu Yi continued to be serious. Wuxia looked at him timidly. Didn't I speak properly? Lu Yi took a deep breath. Suddenly he grabbed her and threw her onto the bed. Then he raised his hand and slapped her. Bah! A sound was heard. The whole world suddenly became quiet. Wuxia threw herself on the bed. She turned her head and looked at Lu Yi in disbelief. Her cheeks flushed and she was absent-minded for a moment. Yi's small mouth was slightly open. She couldn't close it for a long time. The scene in front of her had a great visual impact. Hoopa even raised his paws and covered his eyes. I can't look. I don't dare to look. I'm just a simple tiger. There can't be a next time. Lu Yi stared into Huaxi's eyes and warned her with a solemn expression. Huaxi didn't react. She was obviously stunned by the slap. She felt a burning pain on her back. She could imagine that Lu Yi really used his strength. She saw that Lu Yi had raised his hand again. Huaxi hurriedly replied, I know. There won't be a next time. She hurriedly got up, covered her back with both hands and retreated to the corner of the wall. Lu Yi nodded with satisfaction. He turned his head and looked at Yi and Hoopa. You should also take this as a warning. Like a parent lecturing a naughty child. Yi and Hoopa nodded their heads like chickens pecking at rice. Rest first. I'll go out for a while. After Lu Yi finished speaking, he pushed open the door and walked out. Her face was as calm as water, but her heart was beating wildly. She was too emotional just now and her blood rushed to her head. She didn't control herself for a moment. After the slap, she realized that it was inappropriate. But since she had already slapped, she could only brace herself and continue. It wasn't good to stay in the room anymore. She could only find an excuse to walk out. Fortunately, the result was not bad. After this incident, Huaxi shouldn't be so impulsive next time. But in his heart, he knew that Huaxi did it because of him. He didn't show this gratitude, but he remembered it in his heart. There was a message from the battlefield imprint. If he guessed correctly, it should be from fourth senior brother. After checking, it was indeed so. Lu Yi hurriedly replied and told fourth senior brother that he was safe. He also told him that he had arrived at the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance and that he could rest assured. After ending the message with fourth senior brother, Lu Yi checked the information on his battlefield imprint. Name, Lu Yi. Identity, Blue Blood Sect Disciple. Cultivation, 6th Order Cloud River Realm. Location, Cloud River Battlefield. Merit points, 127,366 points. Battle merit, 283,672 points. In terms of merit, there wasn't much change. At most, it increased by killing some myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators. But his merit was extremely abundant. Although there was still a gap between the merit he obtained in Immortal Essence City, the gap wasn't too big. The most important thing was that the merit he obtained in Immortal Essence City last time was used to exchange for soul water. But now he could freely use the merit he obtained. For example, exchanging it for a golden spirit stick. Now, his most important task was to quickly improve his cultivation. Last time in Immortal Essence City, if the value of soul water wasn't too high, he wouldn't have used up his merit. To be able to obtain such a huge amount of merit, it was naturally because he played an indispensable and even decisive role in many major events in the Soaring Dragon realm. In the Medicine Valley, he presided over the Great Array and cooperated with the Soaring Dragon cultivators to kill the enemy. In that battle alone he obtained almost 30,000 merit points. Compared to the overall harvest, 30,000 merit points were naturally nothing. After that, he participated in the war against the Blood Race with the Soaring Dragon Cultivator Army. Under the ravine, he wore the Dragon Throne, broke the Traction Altar and weakened the Blood World's attachment to the Soaring Dragon realm. That was another huge amount of merit points. After that, he built the 64 heaven mending platforms and presided over the mending of the heavens. That was also a huge amount of merit points. All these results added up to his current harvest. Chapter 748. Lu Yi had noticed it the last time he was in the sealed world of the realm of beasts. Compared to simply killing enemies, if one could participate in some of the major events that happened in the secret realm and play an important role in it, then one would be able to obtain a lot more battle merits. It was the same in the sealed world of the realm of beast. However, he didn't gain a lot of battle points at that time, only about 30,000. The reason was that there were many cultivators from Grand Heaven Alliance who participated in the encirclement of Niumeng. His battle points were probably divided among them. In the Immortal Essence City, the reason why he could gain such a huge amount of battle points by killing enemies was because many of the insects he killed were comparable to True Lake Realm cultivators. The difference in battle points between True Lake Realm and Cloud River Realm was too big. A Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivator was only worth 60 battle points, but a True Lake 1st Order cultivator was worth 100 points, and a True Lake 9th Order cultivator was worth 900 points. In this trip to the Dragon Soaring Realm, if Lu Yi didn't play an important role in the subsequent events, it would be impossible for him to gain such a huge amount of battle points. With more than 280,000 battle points, he could exchange them for 17 golden spirit lots. With his current 6th Order Cloud River Realm cultivation, 17 golden spirit lots would allow him to reach 8th Order Cloud River Realm at least, and even 9th Order Cloud River Realm. Lu Yi was in a good mood. After going down to the 3rd floor, he arrived at the lobby. In an instant, pairs of eyes focused on him from all directions. Lu Yi looked around and saw the cultivators from Myriad Demon's Ridge who blocked him outside the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. He also saw Xiaoliang, Tan Sheng and the others. He had already shaken off Xiaoliang and the others, but now he met them here. Xiaoliang and the others didn't come here to kill him, but to find a medical cultivator to help them detoxify. The Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance did all kinds of business, including treating injuries and dispelling disasters. There were skilled medical cultivators in the Alliance all year round, but the fees were expensive. Under normal circumstances, the cultivators from the two camps wouldn't be willing to come here to seek medical treatment from the Alliance. However, Xiaoliang and the others had no choice. They were in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, which was closest to them, so they could only rush over. On the way, they received news that Lu Yi was hiding in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. Now that they had met their enemies, their eyes were naturally filled with hatred. Their eyes were filled with killing intent and coldness. Lu Yi pretended not to see them. Unless they were tired of living, no one in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance would dare to make a move. Under the watchful eyes of a group of Myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators, he walked towards the direction of the Tianji pillar and stood at the back of the group. Brother Xia, don't be rash. Detoxification is more important. Lu Yi won't be able to escape unless he uses the Tianji pillar to return to the 9 states. Tan Xing tried to calm Xiaoliang down. Xiaoliang took a deep breath and felt a stabbing pain in his chest and abdomen. He gently nodded. I understand. The two of them took another long look at Lu Yi. Only then did they look for the manager of the merchant union and ask the union's medical cultivators to cure the poison. Before the Heavenly Mystery Pillar, the group moved quickly. At any rate, the cultivators who came here had already determined what they wanted to buy. Thus they would not stay for too long. In less than an incense stick's worth of time, it was Lu Yi's turn. He stepped forward and pressed his hand on the Tianji pillar. With a thought, the huge Tianji treasury appeared in front of him. As usual, he searched for some special flames or elixir flames that could be devoured by the talent tree. He did not gain much and only bought a dozen of them. Then he bought a lot of beast cores and replenished his array flags. In total, he spent less than 10,000 contribution points. Then it was time for the highlight. This was also the moment that Lu Yi looked forward to the most. He could not help but feel excited. This was the first time he had used such a huge amount of contribution points to exchange for a golden spiritual lot. With a thought, golden spiritual lot. The surroundings of the Tianji treasury changed rapidly. However, it seemed to be different from normal. It did not quickly freeze and no golden spiritual lot appeared in front of him. Suddenly, a message appeared in his mind. Lu Yi sensed it and understood the specific content of this message. You have obtained the right to enter the War Merit Pavilion. War Merit Pavilion? What was that place? Lu Yi was a little surprised. He recalled all the information he had about the Cloud River battlefield and found that there was no record of the War Merit Pavilion. He was not a fledgling who had just entered the Cloud River battlefield. He was still clear about the most basic things about the Cloud River battlefield. Even if he had not come into contact with many things, he would have heard about them. Moreover, the War Merit Pavilion was too specific. He knew what it was used for. If other cultivators had entered the War Merit Pavilion, there was no reason that there would not be any news about it. However, from the information he had comprehended, not everyone could enter the War Merit Pavilion. This was because there was a qualification mentioned in the information. As for what kind of qualification one needed to enter the War Merit Pavilion, Lu Yi did not know. Perhaps one had to bear a huge amount of contribution points or some other requirements. This world was getting more and more interesting. Since he had obtained the qualification to enter the War Merit Pavilion, Lu Yi naturally wanted to take a look. In his heart, he muttered the words War Merit Pavilion. In the next moment, the rapidly changing scenery suddenly froze. Lu Yi looked up and saw a thick and simple door in front of him that was tightly shut. On the left and right of the door, there were two flood dragons with horns on their heads swimming around as if they were alive. When Lu Yi looked at them, the two flood dragons suddenly froze and looked back at him. Their huge vertical pupils were suffused with a cold light, and their forked tongues hissed in and out of their mouths, making people shudder. A desolate and ferocious aura rushed towards him. Lu Yi was secretly shocked. These two flood dragons were really alive. Moreover, the aura on their bodies was unfathomable. With Lu Yi's current eyesight and perception, he could not sense their depth. Two flood dragons guarding the door? Just what was this War Merit Pavilion for? On the door, there was a seemingly rusty plaque, and the words War Merit Pavilion were carved. Oh! Suddenly, the flood dragon on the left spoke in human language. Its slender body stretched out from the door and circled around Lu Yi. Its huge head was almost touching Lu Yi's face, and the hot breath it exhaled made Lu Yi's skin hurt. After so many years, someone finally came again? It seemed to be sniffing Lu Yi's aura. And it's a very young and delicious boy. The flood dragon on the right remained motionless on the door. At this moment it spoke, "You have guts." Even if Lu Yi's temperament was not bad, he still felt nervous at this moment. Fortunately, he knew that it was not his own body that had entered here, but a manifestation of his mind. Therefore, although his mood was heavy, he did not panic at all. This made the flood dragon on the right give him a good evaluation. "I just don't know if he will live long." The flood dragon on the left continued, and there was a trace of mockery and sarcasm in its tone. It retracted its body and once again occupied its territory. Then the two flood dragons wriggled together and coiled their bodies in circles. When the two flood dragons coiled into two concentric circles, there was suddenly a click from the door, as if the door lock had been opened. "Go in. But boy, you have to remember one thing. Everything in the War Merit Pavilion can only be used by yourself, and you can't reveal a word about the War Merit Pavilion to anyone." Lu Yi cupped his fists and saluted. "I will remember." He finally understood why he had never heard of the War Merit Pavilion. It turned out that there were all kinds of restrictions to entering the War Merit Pavilion. The things inside could only be used by himself, and he could not reveal information about the War Merit Pavilion to anyone else. In this way, even if someone had entered the War Merit Pavilion, no one else would know. Moreover, from the information revealed by the flood dragon on the left, it was not so easy to qualify to enter the War Merit Pavilion. It was not something that could be achieved by carrying a large number of war merits. Because from the information revealed by the flood dragon, it seemed that no one had entered the War Merit Pavilion for many years. Perhaps 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Lu Yi was the first person in all these years. While Lu Yi was lost in thought, the door of the War Merit Pavilion had slowly opened. He stepped in. It was a spacious room. The walls around were made of an unknown material, giving people a feeling of extreme sturdiness. However, Lu Yi was sure that even if the main body of a divine sea realm cultivator was here, they would not be able to damage the place at all. It was not like the Tianji treasury, which was full of shelves. In the entire War Merit Pavilion, there was not a single shelf. There were only pieces of pitch-black stone platforms. As far as the eye could see, there were at least 800 stone platforms, if not 1,000. It seemed that there was an item placed on each stone platform. Lu Yi walked to the stone platform closest to him and looked over. The stone platform was covered with a layer of light curtain. Inside the light curtain, a golden spiritual stick was imprinted into his eyes. The golden spiritual stick could be exchanged directly in the Tianji treasury. There was also a golden spiritual stick in the War Merit Pavilion. It seemed a bit redundant. However, Lu Yi's attention was not on the golden spiritual stick, but on the layer of light curtain. This was a protective array. Furthermore, it was an extremely sturdy and small defensive formation. Lu Yi's attainments in formations were not low. He could casually arrange protective arrays, but it was impossible for him to arrange such a small and exquisite protective array. Formations were not easy to arrange when the area they covered was smaller. This was true to a certain extent, but beyond this range, the difficulty of the arrangement would sharply increase. The protective array in front of him was beyond the scope of Lu Yi's ability, so when he saw it, Lu Yi was interested. As a qualified formation cultivator, he naturally wanted to understand how such a small and exquisite array could be maintained. If he could comprehend the mystery, it would be of great help to his formation skills. 7017K. Chapter 749. If they were in returning Heaven Valley Spirit Land or Blue Blood Sect's main sect, Lu Yi could study this spirit array. However, he was still in the Tianji Business Alliance, and there were many cultivators queuing behind him to use the Tianji pillar. If he stayed here for too long, he would definitely attract their displeasure. Therefore, even though he was reluctant, Lu Yi gave up on comprehending the array's mysteries. Since he had the qualifications to enter the War Merit Pavilion, it wouldn't be too late to study it in the future. He glanced at the golden spirit lot shrouded in the light screen, thought for a moment and pressed his hand on it. The Tianji treasure vault allowed him to exchange for golden spirit lots with battle merits, but the War Merit Pavilion also had them. This made him a little puzzled. Perhaps the golden spirit lots in the two places were different? Anyway, he wouldn't lose anything by looking. The moment Lu Yi pressed his hand on the light screen, another message appeared in his mind, just like the one from the War Merit Pavilion. Exchanging for a golden spirit lot, 14,580 battle merits. Lu Yi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He was naturally very familiar with the prices of the different colors of the spirit sticks. White was 200 battle merits, followed by green, blue, purple, and gold. Each spirit lot was 3 times more expensive than the previous one. The price of a golden spirit lot should be 16,200 points. But here, it only cost 14,580 battle merits, a difference of 1,620 battle merits. This was a 10% discount? So this was the difference between the golden spirit lots in the War Merit Pavilion and the Tianji Treasure Vault. With a 10% discount, each golden spirit lot could save him more than 1,600 battle merits. He had more than 280,000 battle merits, which could only be exchanged for about 17 spirit lots in the Tianji Treasure Vault, but in the War Merit Pavilion, he could exchange for 19 spirit lots. That was 2 extra golden spirit lots. It was like picking them up for free. There was actually such a good thing in this world? Lu Yi almost couldn't help laughing out loud. Even for him, it wasn't easy to obtain 2 golden spirit lots. After all, battle merits weren't something that could be obtained at any time and place. It was different from merit points. If cultivators needed contribution points, they could kill cultivators from the enemy faction or sell items to the Heavenly Mystery Treasure Vault to earn contribution points. However, the conditions for obtaining merit points were undoubtedly much harsher. 2 golden spirit sticks might be the harvest of an entire sealed world for a 9th order Cloud River Realm cultivator. It was just like what Pang Dehai and the others had gained in the Realm of Beast, and that was with a huge risk. However, in this Battle Merit Pavilion it was really a free meal. The War Merit Pavilion was really a good place. No matter what the reason was, he had obtained the qualifications to enter this place. Such qualifications could greatly increase the speed of his growth. Lu Yi suppressed the thought of exchanging for the golden spiritual lot and walked to the next stone platform. The first stone platform was already so cheap. He wanted to see just how many good things there were here. He might be able to find something that he needed more, so he couldn't spend all his battle merits in one go. He stood in front of the second pitch-black stone platform, which was also enveloped by an extremely small and exquisite protective formation. Within the light barrier was a jade bottle. Is this a medicinal pill? Lu Yi wondered. He raised his hand and pressed it on the screen. Immediately, a stream of information flowed through his mind. 2,000 battle merits for the aperture replenishing pill. It turned out to be the aperture replenishing pill. There were aperture replenishing pills in the Tianji treasure house. Lu Yi had spent 300,000 merit points to buy 2 aperture replenishing pills for his 4th senior brother, allowing him to repair his damaged spirit cavities and advance to the Cloud River realm. However, there were very few aperture replenishing pills in the Tianji treasure house. After Lu Yi bought the 2 aperture replenishing pills, there were only a few left in the entire Tianji treasure house. And it didn't take long for them to be completely sold out. However, in this Battle Merit Pavilion, Lu Yi saw another aperture replenishing pill, and it only cost 2,000 battle merits to exchange. Compared to the price he had paid in the past, it was obviously very cheap and cost-effective. However, this wasn't something that Lu Yi needed, so even if it was priceless, Lu Yi didn't look at it. In front of the 3rd stone platform, Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed it. 13,000 battle merits for 1 drop of soul water. Lu Yi clicked his tongue. He had obtained more than 300 drops of soul water in the Immortal Essence City, and the exchange price was 1,000 battle merits per drop. However, in the War Merit Pavilion, it cost 13 times the exchange price. What a great bargain he had taken. And now that he thought about it, the way his battle merits flowed was also very strange because at that time he didn't have the idea of exchanging his battle merits for soul water. It was just that in the process of collecting soul water, his battle merits also disappeared. Lu Yi faintly realized that he could have such a big harvest in the Immortal Essence City, probably because the city lord of the Immortal Essence City secretly helped him. Otherwise, if the price of soul water in the War Merit Pavilion was so high, it didn't make sense that he could exchange so much soul water at such a cheap price in the Immortal Essence City. Lu Yi had only inspected 3 stone platforms, but every item on them was either extremely attractive to him or extremely rare and precious. This made Lu Yi more and more interested in the following investigation. In front of the 4th stone platform, Lu Yi stopped, and his eyes couldn't help but shrink. Because he saw a familiar thing on this stone platform. It was a golden token. Golden body token. There was actually a golden body token here that could be exchanged. Having personally experienced the powerful effect of the golden body token, Lu Yi naturally knew the value of this token. It was a protection bestowed by heaven. In the 9 regions, before the effect of the golden body token was completely lost, no one could break it, not even a spirit sea realm cultivator. Having a golden body token was equivalent to having a means to protect oneself in any desperate situation. Although Lu Yi had investigated several times before, he was full of expectations for the treasures in the War Merit Pavilion, but he never expected that there would even be a golden body token here. He just didn't know the price. It should be very expensive, right? If it wasn't expensive, he could exchange for one and take it with him for self-defense. Raising his hand to press the light screen, Lu Ye's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. He immediately took his hand back and walked to the next stone platform without looking back. A golden body token, 200,000 battle merits. With his current status, he could afford it, but spending 200,000 battle merits on a golden body token was not cost-effective. He still wanted to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. How could it be so expensive? Lu Yi couldn't help but feel resentful, but on second thought, after all, this was an object that could trigger the protection of heaven. It was a protective means that even a spirit sea realm cultivator couldn't do anything about. Expensive, naturally there was a reason for it. The most urgent reason was the heartache. In the hunting ground he was forced to use a golden body token. Until now he still didn't know the value of this object. But after learning that this thing in the War Merit Pavilion actually cost 200,000 battle merits, his heart ached so much that his face trembled. Xiaoliang Tanxing, damn it. Calming down he checked the stone platforms one by one. Indeed, as Lu Yi had thought before, the treasures placed in the War Merit Pavilion, if placed outside, would all be good things that would attract many cultivators to fight over. There were all kinds of incredible elixirs and miraculous medicines, many spiritual flowers and herbs that were almost extinct in the 9 regions, and many strange treasures with strange effects. Everything was placed here. For example, the sacred flame sex Huo Liaoyuan once used the fighting platform on him could be exchanged here with battle merits. The price was not too expensive, just a little more than 10,000 battle merits. However, Lu Yi didn't exchange for this object. Although 10,000 battle merits were not much, it was close to the value of a golden spirit lot. The fighting platform was not very useful to him. If he really encountered some powerhouse that he couldn't resist, his biggest advantage was still his flying wings and wind speed. How could he stay and fight with the enemy to the death? Among the many stone platforms, there were some things that he could see directly. He could try to exchange for these things with battle merits. But there were even more things that he couldn't see clearly. When he put his hand on these things placed on the stone platforms, he couldn't get any information. Lu Yi vaguely guessed that he was not qualified to exchange for these treasures. But he wasn't disappointed. The many treasures that he could see already dazzled him, making it difficult for him to choose. If he could see those that he couldn't see, it would only make his heart itch even more. After a while, Lu Yi walked to a stone platform and looked at the object on it. What surprised Lu Yi was that the object was not a physical object but a mark. A battlefield mark that glowed with red light. Beside this stone platform, there was another stone platform that also had a battlefield mark. However, that battlefield mark glowed with blue light. In the 9 prefectures, the red battlefield mark represented the Myriad Devil Ridge, the blue one represented the Grand Heaven Alliance, and the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance's battlefield mark was yellow. Suddenly, two battlefield marks of different colors appeared here. Lu Yi couldn't help but be puzzled. What was the use of this thing? If he exchanged for it, could he change his faction? But if that was the case, what was the point? From the beginning of a cultivator's cultivation, he would have his own circle. Within this circle, he would meet like-minded friends and make many enemies. Even if he changed his camp, his friends and enemies would not change unless he changed his appearance. With such doubts, Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed on the light screen in front of him. Immediately, many insights appeared in his heart. He realized that he had misunderstood the use of this battlefield mark. It wasn't something that could change one's faction. Exchange for the Myriad Devil Ridge battlefield mark. 18,000 battle merits. Lu Ye's heart moved and he confirmed the exchange. The battlefield mark on his body heated up slightly. That was the sound of his battle merits being deducted. At the same time, the light screen that blocked his hand suddenly disappeared. Then the red battlefield mark swept out and crashed into his forehead. Lu Yi was caught off guard and his head was knocked back. Then he felt a burning sensation on the back of his other hand. Lu Yi looked down and saw that the back of his hand was enveloped by a dark red light. After a while, the red battlefield mark also disappeared. 7017K. Chapter 750. After exchanging for a Myriad Demon Ridge battlefield imprint, Lu Ye's camp affiliation did not change. He quickly came to the first stone platform and pressed his hand on it. He had wasted a lot of time in the War Merit Pavilion, and he did not want to continue looking. There were so many treasures and he could not help but want to exchange for a few more. But what he needed the most now was to quickly improve his own cultivation. Even if he exchanged for these treasures, they could not become his own foundation. At most, they would be external forces. He naturally knew what was more important. Soon, he took out a golden spiritual stick, and his battle merits were deducted by 14,580 points. However, after he took out the golden spiritual stick, another golden spiritual stick appeared out of thin air on the stone platform. This situation was as he expected. There was naturally more than one golden spiritual stick in the War Merit Pavilion, but there was no way to exchange for too many at once. He could only do it one by one. Although it was a little troublesome, it was not a big deal. This was repeated 18 times. There was no way to exchange for more. Lu Yi checked his own battle merits. 3,232 points. There was only a fraction left. In a short time, more than 280,000 battle merits were used up. This made Lu Yi very emotional. It was true that no matter how much one had, there would never be enough to spend. He was now only in the Cloud River realm. If he really reached the True Lake realm, his desire for battle merits would probably be even greater. He put away the 18 golden spiritual sticks and stepped out of the War Merit Pavilion. You can actually resist the temptation. On the open door of the War Merit Pavilion, the dragon on the left door spoke again. Kid, you're not bad. They had guarded the War Merit Pavilion for many years and had seen prodigies of various eras come here. But even those prodigies, when they were young and weak, might not be able to resist the temptation of the War Merit Pavilion. They would often impulsively exchange for many things that seemed precious but were temporarily useless to them. And Lu Yi only exchanged for 2 things in the War Merit Pavilion. Just this mentality of being able to resist the strong temptation surpassed many of his seniors. One's own strength is the foundation. Senior, you're too kind. Lu Yi did not know the origins of these 2 dragons, but he knew that they were not to be trifled with. So when he interacted with them, he would try to be cautious as much as possible. But from the dragon's words, his choice just now should not be wrong. Yes. The dragon on the left answered and then lost interest in talking. As it and its companion slowly turned, the door of the War Merit Pavilion closed again with a rumbling sound. Lu Yi bowed and excused himself. With a thought, his mind returned. Whether it was in the Heavenly Secret Treasury or the War Merit Pavilion, Lu Ye's mind was not completely immersed in them. He would always spare a sliver of his mind to protect himself from possible dangers. There were many cultivators in the Myriad Devil Ridge who had not given up on killing him. He had many enemies in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. Although there were powerful cultivators in the Business Alliance, if someone acted rashly, they would not have a good ending. However, who knew if there were people who cared more about money than life and would risk their lives to drag him down with them? If Lu Yi completely immersed himself in the Tianji treasure trove and someone took the opportunity to launch a brazen attack on him, he wouldn't have the chance to defend himself. As such, he was well aware of the reactions of the cultivators lining up behind him. Many people were impatient from waiting. He had indeed stayed in the War Merit Pavilion a little longer this time. It seemed that if there was a chance next time he would have to do it in the Return to Heaven Valley or the Jade Blood Sect. It was not appropriate to do it in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. Lu Yi did not pay much attention to the reactions of the cultivators behind him and left. He quickly returned to the guest room on the 3rd floor. On the big bed, Wuxia and Yi sat upright, holding hands and talking. They looked like a gentle elder sister and a naughty little sister. No one knew what they were talking about. When Lu Yi pushed the door and entered, he happened to hear Yi's bell-like laughter. Sensing the movement, Wuxia turned to look at him. "You're back." Her expression was as usual, as if she had forgotten what had just happened. "Yes." Lu Yi responded and asked casually, "What are you talking about?" Wuxia immediately said, "Don't ask too much about women's matters." Lu Yi glanced at her disdainfully. If she didn't want to talk, then forget it. He would go back and ask Yi. In front of him, the little girl never hid any secrets. "Are we not going back to the 9 regions?" Wuxia asked. In her opinion, in the current situation, the only way to avoid the disaster was to return to the 9 regions. Although she had been staying in the guest room and did not know the situation outside, since Lu Ye's whereabouts had been exposed, the Demon's Ridge would definitely not let it go. Therefore, without looking, Wuxia knew that there must be many enemies in the Tianji Business Alliance who were eyeing Lu Yi. Not to mention, she had used her own secret technique to poison millions of Demon's Ridge cultivators. If they wanted to detoxify, they could only find medical cultivators. The Tianji Business Alliance was the best choice. But looking at Lu Ye's posture, it was clear that he had no intention of returning to the 9 regions. "Why should we go back?" Lu Yi answered casually. He took off the storage bag around Hupo's neck and put in the monster elixir he had bought from the Tianji treasure house. Hupo was beaming with joy and was extremely happy. During the 1.5 months in the dragon soaring realm, Hupo had been very careful with his food, for fear that he would finish it too quickly and have no place to replenish it. Now that he finally had new supplies, he could eat to his heart's content. "You decide." Wuxia did not care. "This is for you." Lu Yi threw another storage pouch to Wuxia. "What is it?" Wuxia took it and opened it. She found that there were many monster elixirs inside, but they were different from the ones Lu Yi gave to Hupa. These monster elixirs were either purple or green. It was obvious that they were poisonous things. A token of love. Lu Yi talked nonsense. He did not know if he was influenced by Wuxia, but he was not serious in front of her. Wuxia did not mind. She carefully put away the storage bag and said shyly, "Then you have to come early to marry me." Her eyes were curved like the moon. She was obviously in a good mood. So many poisonous monster elixirs were obviously not bought at once. Lu Yi must have deliberately collected them on a daily basis. The feeling of being remembered by someone was naturally not bad. "If you want, we can do it tonight." Lu Yi naturally could not show weakness. "I'm afraid you don't have the guts." Wuxia was not to be outdone. "I don't." Lu Yi sneered. He was a man who cultivated the tyrant saber technique. His saber intent was domineering and peerless. What did he not dare to do? He waved his hand. "Yi." "Yes." Yi, who was watching a good show at the side, quickly responded. "Take Hupa out to play." Yi reacted and picked up Hupa, who was counting how many monster elixirs he had in his storage bag. She was about to leave when Wuxia grabbed her arm. He could not let Yi go. Although Wuxia knew Lu Ye's temperament and knew that he wouldn't really do anything rude to her, if she really forced him to do so, she wouldn't be able to escape a beating. Her butt was still a little burning pain now. She did not want to be slapped a second time. "Ah." Lu Yi chuckled like a general who had won a battle. He walked to the side arrogantly and sat down cross-legged. Wuxia was so angry that her chest kept heaving up and down. The small interlude passed just like that. Ignoring Wuxia and Yi's whispers in the corner, Lu Yi took out many strange fires and elixir fires that he had bought from the Tianji treasure house this time and urged the talent tree to devour them. At the same time, he immersed his mind and operated the Virokana-colored glaze to return from the dragon soaring realm. He killed his way out of the encirclement under Huasi's guidance and fled all the way here with her. On the way to escape, he felt that his body was a little different from before. He also faintly perceived something, but at that time he did not have the time to verify it. Until now. With the activation of the cultivation method, the long river of spirit power in his body flowed faster and faster, rumbling like the movement of a surging river came out. Immediately after, Lu Yi had an extremely strange yet familiar feeling. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in all directions seemed to be attracted by something and rushed into his body, injecting into the long river of spirit power. With the operation of the cultivation method, it turned into his own power. The reason why it was strange was because Lu Yi had never cultivated like this. The cultivation methods of cultivators were mainly divided into several types. Breathing in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, swallowing elixirs, refining essence into qi. No matter which cultivator, if they wanted to improve their own cultivation, it was inevitable that they had to use these three methods as the main means. For a long time, Lu Ye's main cultivation method was swallowing elixirs and refining essence into qi. It was not that he did not want to breathe in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, but he could not do it. He did not know if it was because his cultivation aptitude was really low, but his body was not enough for him to breathe in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It was as if there was a layer of isolation on the surface of his body, blocking the influx of spiritual energy of heaven and earth. So he could only use a shortcut. He built a small spiritual funnel on the surface of his body and let the tip of the small funnel pierce the barrier that isolated his body from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. In this way, under the effect of the small spiritual funnel, whether it was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth or the pure energy drawn by using the spirit lot, they could be directly injected into his spiritual cavities, the long river of spirit power. But at this moment he was indeed breathing in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Since he started cultivating, this was the first time he did not use the small spiritual funnel to achieve this. And the efficiency seemed to be not low. He could feel that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around him was extremely intimate with him. As he breathed in and out, it rushed into his body and became his capital to become stronger. There was no reason for his body to suddenly have such a change. The origin of heaven and earth of the soaring dragon realm. Lu Yi understood that the reason for such a change was definitely because of the origin of heaven and earth of the soaring dragon realm. He had long felt that the benefits that the soaring dragon realm's final source of the heavens and earth brought to him were not limited to bringing him back from the dead, nor were they limited to increasing his vitality. There were many other benefits that he had yet to discover. At this moment he finally confirmed one thing. The origin of the soaring dragon realm changed his cultivation aptitude. Chapter 751. In the cultivation world of the 9 provinces, cultivators' aptitudes were divided into 64 grades. The higher the number, the better the aptitude. This meant that the higher a cultivator's affinity with the heaven and earth spirit qi, the more efficient they would be at absorbing the heaven and earth spirit qi. After all, for most cultivators, absorbing the heaven and earth spirit qi was the main method of cultivation without any hidden dangers. Consuming spirit pills was only a supplement. Hence, aptitude for cultivation was especially important. Lu Ye's nickname, One Leaf, originated from the results of his aptitude test in Evil Moon Valley. A one-leaf aptitude could be said to be only slightly better than ordinary people who could not cultivate at all. All this while, Lu Yi had been brooding over his nickname. What made him feel extremely helpless was that even the heavenly secrets seemed to have recognized him as such. In the battlefield mark, his name was Lu Yi. However, he did not know when it had become Lu Yi. The Spirit Stream leaderboard in the Spirit Stream battlefield and the hunting leaderboard in the hunting ground both showed Lu Yi. Now, Lu Yi had finally broken free of his one-leaf aptitude. Search. Although he was not sure about his current aptitude, it was impossible for him to only have one leaf. With his efficiency in absorbing the heaven and earth spirit qi, he would at least have 40 leaves. It was even possible for him to have 50 leaves. The change in his aptitude would undoubtedly speed up his cultivation in the future. Lu Yi was in a good mood. He could not help but laugh. Wuxia, who was talking to Yi, could not help but glance at him. She muttered, "You're like an idiot." After saying that, she ignored him and continued talking to Yi. In truth, Lu Yi had already vaguely sensed the change in his aptitude when he was in the Soaring Dragon Realm. However, the Soaring Dragon Realm had lost too much of its foundation, and the heaven and earth spirit qi was not dense. Hence he could not feel it clearly. When he returned to the Cloudy River battlefield, the feeling became even more obvious. At this moment it was finally confirmed. Lu Yi did not expect the world's origin to be able to change a person's cultivation aptitude. However, when he thought about it, it was the world's origin after all. If it could even bring the dead back to life, what was a change in one's cultivation aptitude? Hence he felt relieved. A moment later, Lu Yi stopped circulating his cultivation method. He focused his mind and looked at the innate talent tree. All the rare flames and alchemic flames he bought from the Tianji treasure vault had been devoured clean. He wondered if there were any gains this time. Every time the talent tree engulfed the flames, he would be filled with anticipation when he checked the talent tree. It was because ever since he started cultivating, the many spirit runes on the talent tree had brought him great help. Activating all kinds of spirit inscriptions in battle could increase his combat power and self-defense ability. The reason why he could have such high attainments in Array Dao was also because of the foundation laid by the Dao of Spirit Tattoos. Having reached this level of cultivation, Lu Yi understood one thing. The way of spiritual tattoos involved all aspects of cultivation. The more profound one's attainments in the way of spiritual tattoos were, the easier it would be for him to cultivate other things. Regardless of whether it was the art of sorcery, the art of formation, or even the art of refining, they could all be said to be the extension and branch of the spiritual tattoo. In a word, the way of spiritual tattoos could be regarded as the foundation of all unorthodox methods. Lu Yi was stunned when he saw this. At this moment, more than 20 leaves on the talent tree were glowing red. Clearly this was a change caused by the devouring flames. However, the leaves did not burn. Only when the leaves were completely burned could Lu Yi check the information contained within them. The fact that the leaves were not completely burned meant that the flames devoured by the talent tree were not enough to ignite the leaves. Furthermore, the fact that more than 20 leaves had the same reaction meant that they were carrying the same spirit rune. Lu Yi was overjoyed. This kind of spiritual inscription that required more than 20 leaves to carry was definitely extremely complicated. Fire Phoenix, Sky Restriction, Flying Wings, and Charm were all spiritual inscriptions of this type. Although the consumption of spiritual energy to execute was much greater than ordinary spiritual inscriptions, the effects were also greater. What kind of spirit rune was this? Lu Yi observed carefully. However, the leaves were not completely ignited and the runes were blurry. No matter how Lu Yi checked, he could not see anything. This made him look forward to it even more. However, the awkward thing was that he did not have too many flames on hand for the talent tree to devour. Or, should he devour the earth core fire that he had in reserve? He had always kept about 20 portions of earth core fire on hand, mainly in case the talent tree ran out of fuel one day and he needed the power of the talent tree to burn the external forces that invaded his body. For example, if he was poisoned at a critical moment like this, if the talent tree ran out of fuel and was not replenished in time, it would be dangerous. He would not use these 20 portions of earth core fire under normal circumstances. As soon as the thought arose, he rejected it. It was not that he was reluctant to use it, but since it was an emergency, it was better not to use it easily. Moreover, according to his observation, even if he devoured these 20 portions of earth core fire, it should not be enough to completely ignite the leaves. There were still many strange flames for sale in the Tianji treasure trove, but all of them were expensive, easily tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of merit points per portion. For some cultivators, they might need these strange flames to cultivate some kind of secret art. However, Lu Yi was only using them for the talent tree to devour. It was not worth it to pay such a high price. Let's wait a little longer. In the future, there would always be a chance to buy a rare flame at a good price. There were still many things that he needed to do now. There were still many things to do and he was not in a hurry to get this spirit rune with unknown effects. After making up his mind, Lu Yi cut off the urgency in his heart and looked up to Kali. Come on, let's cultivate. Wuxia, come too. Wuxia blinked her big innocent eyes. Her words would not stop until she was shocked to death. Double shame? Otherwise, why would we cultivate together? What nonsense are you spouting in front of a child? Lu Yi glared at her and raised his hand to take out the golden spirit stick that he had exchanged for in the War Merit Pavilion. Huaxi's eyes lit up when she saw it. She walked over and bent down to pick up the spirit stick. She turned it over and over to examine it. So this is a spirit stick? She had heard before that there was something special called a spirit stick in the Cloud River battlefield. This thing could help cultivators quickly increase their cultivation base, and there was also a mechanism like a spirit stick bestowed by the heavens. Chapter 752, Unknown Spirit Rune. However, if she joined, she would have to take away half of Lu Ye's time. This was undoubtedly not worth it, especially the spirit chi of heaven and earth. To her, it was not that important. Her cultivation relied on all kinds of poisons. The many poison pills that Lu Yi had given her were enough for her to cultivate for a long time. Moreover, she had accumulated a large number of myriad poison pills in the spirit stream battlefield. She also needed to refine them and absorb them into her body to increase her cultivation base. Lu Yi was about to continue persuading her when he felt an inexplicable sense of alarm. He suddenly remembered what the flood dragon guarding the War Merit Pavilion had said to him. Everything in the War Merit Pavilion could only be used by himself, and he could not reveal the slightest bit of information to anyone. He had only cared about enjoying Yi's admiring gaze. He wanted to quickly increase Huaxi's cultivation base and had forgotten about this. It seemed that these golden spirit sticks could only be used by him. Thinking of this, Lu Yi no longer tried to persuade her. He raised his hand and crushed a golden spirit stick. The golden dust swirled and turned into a vortex. Immediately after, an extremely large and rich spirit chi of heaven and earth surged out from the vortex, enveloping Lu Yi and Hu Pa. The spirit chi gathered and did not dissipate. It only surrounded the three figures and did not leak out at all. Huaxi stood at the side and watched, clicking her tongue in wonder. Since it was the first time she had seen a golden spirit stick, it was naturally the first time she had seen someone cultivate with the help of a spirit stick. The purity and richness of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was simply breathtaking. Those few square meters of spiritual chi had already turned into mist. It could be directly cultivated by the earth without any refinement. The long river of spirit chi absorbed and strengthened the power of the earth cultivator. Volume. She understood in her heart. No wonder people said that the Cloud River realm was a magical realm. In this realm, because the foundation that cultivators laid in the spirit stream realm was different, there would often be some cases of cultivators of a higher realm killing enemies. Moreover, because of the spirit sticks, as long as they were lucky enough, it was much easier for Cloud River realm cultivators to increase their cultivation base compared to spirit stream realm cultivators. Now it seemed that it was indeed so. Chapter 752. The spirit stream realm was the first stage of cultivation, and it was also the stage where one's foundation was laid, so it was best not to be too hasty. This was also the reason why there were no spirit lots on the spirit stream battlefield. But at the Cloud River realm, cultivators needed to improve their strength as quickly as possible, and spirit lots were born. Once a cultivator reached the Cloud River realm, they would inevitably come into contact with spirit lots. Seeing that Lu Yi and Yi were already immersed in cultivation, Huaxi walked to the other side of the room and sat down cross-legged. When she had first met Lu Yi, her cultivation had been slightly higher than Lu Ye's, but now the situation had been completely reversed. She was now at the first-order Cloud River realm, while Lu Yi was at the 6th layer. Furthermore, he had 18 golden spirit lots, so his cultivation would increase greatly. He also needed to improve his cultivation. Huaxi thought to herself. Otherwise, the gap between them would only grow bigger and bigger, and one day she might not even be able to see Lu Ye's back clearly. However, she was still very confident in her ability to increase her cultivation. For ordinary cultivators, even with the help of spirit lots, they still had to do it step by step to increase their cultivation. But she had a different cultivation method. Raising her hand, a 10,000 poison pill appeared in her palm. She stuffed it into her mouth and swallowed it, silently refining it. She felt the surging power explode in her body, strengthening her foundation. The 10,000 poison pill was the condensation of her cultivation. Because she had always been in the spirit stream battlefield, she was suppressed by the spirit stream battlefield's rules, so her cultivation could only reach the 9th layer at most. If she wanted to improve, she could only reach the Cloud River realm and leave the spirit stream battlefield. But how could she bear to leave such a precious place like the 10,000 poison forest? So, every time her cultivation reached the 9th layer, she would cut off her cultivation and condense it into a 10,000 poison pill. After storing the 10,000 poisons pill, his cultivation would drop to Heaven Realm 8, and he would have to cultivate again. This cycle repeated over and over again. This caused Huaxi to suffer for a long time on the Spirit Stream battlefield. This generation of cultivators on the Spirit Stream battlefield was really bitter. In the past 10 years there were Feng Yuchan, Yan Xing and Li Baxian, these three malignant tumors, who firmly occupied the top 10 positions of the Spirit Stream list. After sending off the three of them with great difficulty, before the Spirit Stream realm cultivators could even celebrate, Lu Yi of the Jade Blood sect appeared out of nowhere and overtook them. During the few months that he ruled over the Spirit Stream battlefield, even the first-grade sects in the core region were suppressed to the point that they could not raise their heads. The cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge were on tenterhooks when they went out. Fortunately, in just a few short months, Lu Yi had advanced to the Cloud River realm and left the Spirit Stream battlefield. They had thought that the haze that had enveloped the Spirit Stream battlefield had finally dissipated, and light had arrived. who knew that Wuxia of the Jade Blood sect would suddenly appear. This unknown woman, who seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, was actually a dark cloud that was even darker than Lu Ye's. Because of her, the spirit stream battlefield hadn't seen any sunlight for a very long time. No one could accept the fact that she was listed as a medical cultivator on the spirit stream list. A medical practitioner. It wasn't that there weren't any medical cultivators on the spirit stream list. However, there weren't many of them. Furthermore, their rankings were all quite low, with most of them being below the 50s. A medical cultivator who could make it into the top 50 was already impressive enough, let alone the first place of the spirit stream ranking. Furthermore, she had occupied the top spot for nearly a year, which was even longer than Lu Ye had occupied the spirit stream list. The cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance weren't so bad. After all, the Jade Blood sect was part of their faction. Wuxia occupying the first place could be considered to have brought honor to the Grand Heaven Alliance. However, the Earth cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge were having a hard time. Every time they checked the spirit stream list, they would see the names and factions at the top. It was like an invisible hand was slapping them in the face. In the past year, it was not that there were no experts from the Myriad Demons Ridge who had challenged Huasi's position at the top of the list. However, after a battle, they had been poisoned without even seeing Huasi's figure and had no choice but to admit defeat. In the 3 months after Lu Yi had left the spirit stream battlefield, Huasi had encountered quite a few challenges from the Myriad Demons Ridge. However, as her fame grew, no one dared to provoke her. This gave her plenty of time to cultivate in the Forest of 10,000 Poisons. By the time she left the Forest of 10,000 Poisons, the forbidden area that had existed for countless years in the spirit stream battlefield had become an ordinary forest. All the essence in the Forest of 10,000 Poisons had turned into the Myriad Poisons pills in Huasi's hands. As a result, she had nearly 100 Myriad Poisons pills in her storage. Each Myriad Poisons pill was the condensed essence of the Heavenly 8 to Heavenly 9 realms. In Lu Ye's hands, the Myriad Poisons pills could only be used to kill enemies. However, in Huasi's hands, they were no less effective than the Golden Spirit Lots. In fact, they were even more effective. As long as she refined the Myriad Poisons again, Huasi was confident that even if she couldn't catch up to Lu Ye's cultivation, she wouldn't fall too far behind. The room was silent. 2 people, 1 spirit and 1 tiger, were immersed in their cultivation, unable to extricate themselves. Lu Yi didn't use up all 18 Golden Spirit Lots in one go. A Golden Spirit Lot could last for a little more than a day, which was about 14 to 14 hours. If he wanted to use up all 18 Golden Spirit Lots, even if he didn't stop for a moment, it would take 20 days. Although he was eager to increase his cultivation, he also knew that it wasn't necessarily a good thing to increase his cultivation too quickly and fiercely. His body needed to adapt to the increase in strength. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if he couldn't control the power he obtained after his cultivation level increased. An appropriate amount of precipitation would make the increase in cultivation more stable. Therefore, every time he used up 3 Golden Spirit Lots, he would rest for 2 days and continue to cultivate with the help of the Spirit Lots. He didn't stay idle when he was resting. There were many things he needed to do. Comprehending the secret manual of the Tyrant Saber technique, digesting the 100 Formation Pagoda's gift, activating the Breath Fruit Core to enter the Mirage to train and adapt to the changes in his strength. During this period, he sensed another benefit brought to him by the Dragon Soaring Realm's world origin. His comprehension seemed to be much higher than before. Because after comprehending the secret manual of the Tyrant Saber technique again, he could see many things that he couldn't see in the past and comprehend things that he hadn't comprehended in the past. The secret manual of the Tyrant Saber technique wasn't just those 3 blades. This was a complete set of saber technique inheritance. Everything was contained in those 3 earth-shattering blades. Lu Yi could only observe the first blade now, but he could already learn many useful things from it. And these comprehensions could all improve his battle skills and killing methods. The person who left behind this set of inheritance must be a powerful cultivator. The Dragon Emperor wasn't something from the Dragon Soaring Realm, it was a foreign object. Lu Yi suspected that the Tyrant Saber technique was also a foreign object. Just like that, the days passed without any surprises. A month passed in a flash. When the power of the last Golden Spirit Lot was exhausted, the golden vortex in front of him disappeared, and the thick fog that shrouded his body also disappeared. Lu Yi slowly opened his eyes and exhaled softly. He had to admit that after his cultivation aptitude improved, the efficiency of his cultivation had indeed increased significantly. This undoubtedly made the value of the golden spirit lot greater to him. The long river of spirit energy in his body surged, and the sound of the river water hummed. As Lu Yi exhaled, it slowly calmed down. The surging spirit energy fluctuations around his body also slowly converged. And the spirit energy fluctuations showed that he was an 8th order Cloud River Realm cultivator. After a month of hard work, he broke through from the 6th order Cloud River Realm to the 8th order in one fell swoop, directly crossing a realm. Such speed was simply amazing. Moreover, Lu Yi hadn't just entered the 8th order. He had already broken through to the 8th order 3 days ago. These 3 days of cultivation had allowed him to accumulate a lot of spirit energy in the 8th order. Yi and Hu Po's spirit energy and monster chi fluctuations were not inferior to his. In other words, in terms of cultivation alone, Yi and Hu Po were not left behind by him. All of this was due to the mysterious power of the golden spirit lot. Part of the reason for its effectiveness was the special cultivation method of the spirit and tiger. Lu Ye's cultivation efficiency was naturally much higher than Yi and Hu Po's, but the spirit and tiger's cultivation had always been complementary. The two combined into one, which was why they could be on par with Lu Yi. The three of them had grown tremendously, but compared to Hua Xi's growth, it seemed to be nothing. Lu Yi raised his eyes and looked at Hua Xi, who was still cultivating. At this moment, this woman was surrounded by a faint green fog. At a glance, it was obvious that it was highly toxic. However, under her control it did not spread at all. Otherwise, this room would not be able to accommodate anyone. A month ago, Hua Xi was in the 1st order Cloud River Realm, but now her spirit energy fluctuations had reached the 6th order Cloud River Realm. In a month, she had crossed 5 minor realms. Throughout the ages, this was probably the only example. Even if other cultivators continuously used the golden spirit lot for a month, their cultivation speed would not be able to match Hua Xi's progress. All of this was naturally due to her myriad poison pill. This was the condensation of one minor realm cultivation, so it was naturally very easy for her to refine it into her body. Therefore, although Hua Xi had stayed in the spirit stream battlefield for nearly a year, the impact on her cultivation was only temporary. She had just used a method that others could not understand to store her cultivation. When she arrived at the Cloud River battlefield, she had made terrifying progress. Retracting his gaze, Lu Yi stood up. Is he leaving? Yi saw through his thoughts. And there are some things that should be settled. Yi naturally knew what he was talking about. Ever since he had formed a grudge with those people in the hunting ground, the other party had been relentless and wanted to kill Lu Yi. After such a long time, Lu Yi was completely defeated, but he was able to turn defeat into victory with the help of the spirit array. But this kind of entanglement would eventually come to an end. No one wanted to be constantly targeted. Read the latest chapter of The Great Sage. In the spirit stream battlefield, the myriad demon ridge cultivators targeted Lu Yi in all kinds of ways, but when Lu Yi had enough strength, he killed them until rivers of blood flowed. The core region's large sects were suppressed to the point that they could not raise their heads. Yi had a very strong premonition. History seemed to be repeating itself. The current Lu Yi, just like in the spirit stream battlefield, already had the capital to turn the tables. Chapter 753. Diagonally opposite the Tianji Business Alliance in a restaurant. Two people sat opposite each other at a table by the window on the 2nd floor. It was Xiao Liang and Tan Xing. At another table not far away, there were two people sitting. Chu Yun and Zhou Pei from the Sacred Flame sect. The two of them from the Sacred Flame sect sat motionlessly with their eyes closed. One of them stared at the Tianji Business Alliance without blinking. At the entrance of the Business Alliance. They had been in this state for a full month. In other words, they had been waiting here ever since Lu Yi hid in the Tianji Business Alliance. It wasn't just the four of them but also the entire restaurant. They searched. Even in the nearby buildings, there were tens of thousands of people. The hidden figures of the Demon Ridge cultivators. Unlike Chu Yun and Zhou Pei at this moment, both Xiao Liang and Tan Xing were full of emotions. Sorrow. It had been delayed for too long. Since the first time they met Lu Yi in the hunting ground, the two of them had thoughts of killing him. Until today they had already passed. They had been gone for almost 10 months, but they still didn't think he could succeed. According to the normal speed of cultivation, the two of them should have already advanced to the True Lake realm, but, at this moment they were still wasting their time here. Looking around, how familiar was this scene? Last time, Lu Yi poisoned 20 million people in the mine. After the Demon Ridge cultivators, they hid in a Tianji Business Alliance. In the alliance, they were the ones who stayed outside to keep an eye on them. At the top, the same thing happened again. This was simply unimaginable. Endless pent-up anger and grievance turned into a belly full of resentment, grief and indignation. On the table there were a few dishes. Xiao Liang and Tan Xing drank together, drowning their sorrows. Putting down the wine cup, Tan Xing looked in the direction of the Tianji Business Alliance. He glanced at it and sighed. Brother Xia, in another 10 days, heaven, whether Luoye appears or not, I have to leave. It's open. Xiao Liang paused in his action of picking up food and looked at him. Brother Tan, do you want to give up just like that? Tan Xing shook his head. Of course not, but I have to give up. The Cloud River battle is about to begin. I need to calm down. I need to rest for a few days. For such a grand event, the cultivators of the 9 regions, perhaps we can only encounter it once in our lives. When it's time, we should go all out. Then he looked at Xiao Liang and persuaded, Brother Xia, you should learn to let go and not be too stubborn. Yes. Xiao Liang remained silent. In fact, Tan Xing and Lu Yi did not have much blood. It was easy to let go of a grudge, but he wasn't that simple. The bed was empty. If he didn't kill Lu Yi, how could he kill Li Baxian? How to take revenge for Yan Xing? After such a long time together, Tan Xing also knew Xiao Liang. What was his obsession? Seeing that he was unable to persuade him, he gave up. What did he say? Last time. After a while, Xiao Liang spoke. What? Tan Xing was puzzled. Xiao Liang said, I have a feeling that this is the only thing we can do. There's only one chance left. Brother Xia, you mean, that bastard's strength is growing too fast. Even if the Cloud River tier was a realm where one's cultivation progress was relatively faster, to begin with, in the same realm, Lu Ye's growth rate was terrifying enough. It was terrifying. If the growth was purely in terms of cultivation, then, forget it. The 6th Order Cloud River realm was far from the 9th Order. There was still a big gap between their realms. However, the strength that Lu Yi displayed was truly shocking. So, a 6th Order could kill an 8th Order as easily as chopping melons and vegetables. If he advanced to the 7th Order, wouldn't he be able to kill the 9th Order? The ability of a 3rd Order? He disappeared for more than a month before. He must have used that broken transmission array to go to some secret realm. I'm afraid he had some gains in his realm. He must have been trying to improve his cultivation. Xiao Liang's expression was solemn. He didn't even realize that at this moment he was already wary of Lu Yi. He had a lot of fear. Now he is most likely at the 7th Order realm. Tan Xing's hand movements paused. He pondered for a moment and found that what Xiao Liang said was most likely true. So Brother Tan. Xiao Liang looked at Tan Xing seriously. This is our only chance. If this is the only chance. If we don't succeed this time, I'm afraid there won't be a next time. The next time they met, it should be them hiding in Landing Yi. Moreover, it shouldn't be long before he shows up. Xiao Liang's tone was firm. If other Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators encountered such a thing, they would naturally return to the 9 states with the help of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance's Heavenly Secret Pillar. Their sect would be the safest. But that Luoye didn't exist. He didn't do it when he was in Returning Heaven Valley. He didn't do it this time either. Naturally, he couldn't do it this time. He couldn't do it this way. If he really improved his strength in secret, when he came out of seclusion, he would definitely appear again and stir up a storm. And this was also what Xiao Liang had been waiting for. This was his last chance. How sure are you, Brother Xia? Tan Xing asked. If that was the case, this was his only chance. He really couldn't miss it. Xiao Liang just spat out a word. His eyes narrowed as he stared sharply at the Heavenly Secret Chamber of Commerce. At the entrance of the Alliance, there was a mark that was enough for him to carve into his bones. Heart's figure slowly walked out. As if sensing his gaze, she raised her head and looked over. She came over. Their eyes met. Lu Ye's eyes were as calm as water. Xiao Liang's eyes were burning like torches. 100%. Xiao Liang drank the wine in his cup, put down the wine cup heavily and stood up. At the same time, Chu Yun and Zhou Pei, who were beside him, also stood up. Not only that, the entire restaurant moved. The restaurant also became noisy at this moment, and then it became filled with noise. It spread to several nearby buildings. There are so many people. In front of the Heavenly Secret Chamber of Commerce, Lu Yi muttered softly. He took out his spirit boat and stepped on it. He rose into the sky and flew straight into the distance. As soon as he left, a large number of myriad Demon Ridge cultivators appeared behind him. Warriors followed him. In the guest room on the third floor of the Heavenly Secret Chamber of Commerce, they looked through the window. This spectacular scene made Wuxia puzzled. Why? Why is it so lively wherever he goes? She turned her head and glanced at Yi. Don't worry. Are you? Yi smiled. Lu Yi is very confident. There's nothing to worry about. She had always been by Lu Ye's side, following him on his journey to the south. After experiencing all kinds of life and death crises in the north, Yi had long been used to this kind of ups and downs. She would be exhausted to death if she was constantly on edge. This time, Lu Yi didn't even bring Amber with him. Obviously he was full of confidence. There was no need for her to worry about anything. At this moment, in the sky, the scorching sun was overhead, and a stream of light was in front. A large number of streams of light were chasing closely behind. The scene was hot. It was noisy. The ones at the front were naturally Xiaoliang and Tan Xing. There were some powerful 9th and 8th order Cloud River Realm cultivators. As he chased, Tan Xing sensed Lu Yi's spirit energy fluctuations, which could be used to determine the level of his current cultivation. Xiaoliang's previous words were very reasonable, so Tan Xing also felt that Lu Yi's cultivation should have improved. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to suddenly appear like this. He turned around. He secretly sensed, but he couldn't figure it out. Because Lu Yi seemed to be deliberately restraining his qi. His aura and spirit energy fluctuations were most likely due to a concealment, something like an aura talisman. Brother Xia, can you tell what his cultivation is now? Tan Xing asked as they chased. He's definitely 7th order. Xiaoliang replied. Although Lu Yi was most likely using an aura concealment talisman, he wanted to hide his true strength, but there was no way to completely conceal it when flying on an artifact like this. This caused his aura and spirit energy fluctuations to fluctuate, sometimes revealing the appearance of a 5th or 6th order cultivator. At other times, it seemed like a 7th order cultivator. Of course, it was also because of the distance. Lu Yi didn't fly too fast and they didn't dare to chase after him. It was too tight for fear that Lu Yi would rush back to the heavenly sky. Mecha Commerce Alliance. The two sides maintained a tacit understanding. Their speed. I think so too. Tan Xing nodded. He was shocked. He was really 7th order. How long had it been? Why did Lu Yi have so many opportunities and opportunities? What about encounters? Sure enough, as Xiaoliang said before, this was already their last chance. If they couldn't get rid of the root this time, the next time they met, it was really hard to say who would kill who. While they were communicating, Chu Yun and Zhou Yu, who were not far away, Pei had almost come to the same conclusion. Under normal circumstances, when a cultivator urged their spirit energy, their cultivation couldn't be concealed because there would be a spirit. Spirit energy fluctuations fluctuated. An experienced cultivator could easily judge the strength of the spirit energy fluctuations. The level of a cultivator's strength. Lu Ye's spirit energy fluctuations and even his aura fluctuated. He didn't even let the myriad demon ridge cultivators behind him notice. His true cultivation relied on nothing more than one thing. The aura concealing spirit tattoo. In order to be able to activate the aura concealing spirit tattoo while flying on an artifact, Lu Yi also put in a lot of effort to conceal it. This caused his spirit energy fluctuations to fluctuate. He had just advanced to the 7th order Cloud River realm and hadn't had time to stabilize his realm. Fortunately, the distance between them wasn't too close, otherwise it would really look bad. It would easily be exposed. The people chasing from Myriad Demon Ridge didn't chase too closely. Lu Yi naturally knew what they were worried about. They were afraid that he would hide back in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance when the situation turned bad. Coincidentally, Lu Yi had the same plan. Now, things were getting interesting. As time passed, the distance between them and the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance was getting closer and closer. Far away. Until a certain moment, Xiaoliang couldn't hold back his impatience. He shouted anxiously, "It's about time." As soon as he finished speaking, his speed suddenly increased, and in an instant he shot out like an arrow. He shot out like an arrow. But in the next moment he suddenly paused. He stood in midair with a dignified expression. Behind him, a large group of myriad Demon Ridge cultivators chased over. The warriors also stopped in their tracks. There was no other reason. Lu Yi suddenly fell down. Just stood there and turned around and said, "Hey!" He looked at them quietly. What was he going to do? Every myriad Demon Ridge cultivator had such doubts in their hearts. They asked. There was no way not to be surprised. They were clearly the ones being chased. Fang, however, suddenly stopped running away. This was true. It was too strange. Is there an ambush? Someone suddenly asked in horror. This immediately caused many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators to panic. It was chaotic. Although this person was asking a question, the people next to him could hear it. But it sounded like an affirmative tone. For a moment the scene was chaotic. The warriors looked around, but where could they see an ambush? There were no traces here. There was nothing here to hide. Even more so, it was impossible for anything to hide anyone. On the ground below, Lu Yi raised his head and looked up, revealing a look of disappointment. A motley crew. Chapter 754. Although his tone was light, everyone present was a Cloud River tier cultivator with outstanding hearing and eyesight. How could they not hear him clearly? They were all furious. However, even though they were angry, they also knew that Lu Yi was not wrong. After all, they were not from the same sect and their relationship was not that close. Although they had attacked Lu Yi together, each of them had their own thoughts and did not have too many plans or unified commands. That was why Lu Yi had been able to escape so many times. It was also because of this that he had managed to escape when being hunted down. Therefore, even though they felt uncomfortable, no one refuted him. What they could be sure of now was that there was no ambush here. As for the formation that Lu Yi relied on the most, he should not have had time to set it up. Then what was the reason why the other party was so calm and composed? The crowd could not help but feel a little surprised. The scene suddenly became a little strange. There were clearly many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators chasing after Lu Yi, but at this moment they were all alone. At this moment, the myriad Demon Ridge side, which had the advantage in numbers, was hesitant, as if they had the upper hand. Is Lu Yi not going to make a move? Lu Yi asked softly. Search. No one answered. Only the wind whistled past and the atmosphere was austere. Lu Yi took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling at a rate visible to the naked eye. He squatted down slightly, staggered his feet, and raised his hand to press the hilt of the mountain plate saber at his waist. His eyes were lowered, and the black hair in front of his forehead cast a shadow, blocking the intimidating light in his eyes. If you don't make a move, then I'll do it. The moment the last word was spoken, there was a loud explosion, and the ground cracked like a broken mirror. Footprints. 2 floating footprints were left on the ground. With the help of the recoil, Lu Yi soared into the sky like an arrow released from a bow, pouncing straight toward the numerous enemies. In that instant, the aura that wrapped around him was like an ancient ferocious beast that had broken out of its cage, like a flood dragon that had come out of the sea in a rage. The shocking wildness and ruthlessness caused many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators to panic. The myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who had been chasing after Lu Yi had been wondering what the hell he was doing. No one had expected him to actually pounce on them like this. Although there were not many people chasing after him this time, there were still 200 of them, taking the initiative to attack. 1 man against 200. What's more, what kind of audacity was this? He really did not put them in his eyes. Everyone was enraged and instinctively attacked. In an instant, streams of imperial equipment and spell techniques blasted forward. Colorful lights intertwined and dazzled everyone's eyes. Among the many spells, the 2 fire spells were the most eye-catching. This was the technique that Chu Yun and Zhou Pei had used. Although the Sacred Flame sect was only a 4th-grade sect, they had once been a 1st-grade sect. Naturally, the disciples they taught would not be weak, especially since both of them were in the 9th Order Cloud River realm. The power of their attacks was even more extraordinary. A cracking sound rang out. It was the sound of Lu Ye's defensive spirit rune shattering. The blood spurted out, following Lu Ye's path, leaving behind a trail of scarlet. At the same time, the 2 powerful fire dragons had already appeared. Under the control of Yun and Zhou Pei, they attacked Yi from the left and right. Yi came at them from both sides. The fire dragons roared, shaking their heads and wagging their tails. Lu Ye's figure was instantly engulfed in flames. Many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were shocked when they saw this scene. They almost couldn't help but cheer. We got him. Although they didn't know why Lu Yi was so arrogant that he could take the initiative to attack so many of them alone, it was still an unwise move. The only thing that made them feel regretful was that this time, they had all attacked together. Even if they killed Lu Yi, the reward would be divided equally among all of them. Good. Be careful, he's not dead. Suddenly, a cry of alarm came from the crowd. No one knew who had issued the warning. As soon as the words were spoken, a familiar figure rushed out from the flames. As far as the eye could see, Lu Ye's clothes were in tatters and looked terrible, but there was no trace of being burned by a fire attribute magic technique. The two most powerful fire dragons didn't seem to have caused any damage to him. Both Chu Yun and Zhou Pei were shocked. No one knew better than them how powerful their techniques were. Even if they were all ninth order cultivators, it would be impossible for them to take their joint attack unscathed, but this Lu Ye had actually done it. Not to mention, Lu Ye's defensive means had been broken and his protective spirit chi had been pierced through. In other words, he had relied on his defenseless body to block their attacks unscathed. How is this possible? The explosion of the two fire dragons obscured the vision and perception of many myriad demon ridge cultivators. They reacted to the situation in front of them. They had made an error in judgment. When Lu Ye's figure appeared again, no one reacted. An extremely domineering and violent aura erupted from his body, carrying with it an indescribable sense of invasiveness and oppression. Many of the myriad demons ridge cultivators standing at the very front were instantly distracted and fell into a trance. Then a flash of saber light swept up a storm of death. Blood splattered and severed limbs flew, accompanied by miserable screams. Below them they descended. Fire. Countless figures stood in the air like dumplings. Wherever Lu Yi passed, no one could withstand a single blow. In an instant he opened up a bloody path in the crowd and killed his way to Chu Yun and Zhou Pei. The two spell cultivators from Sacred Flame sect only just came back to their senses at this moment. Both of them were shocked and their eyes were filled with shock. Lu Yi had specifically targeted the two of them. In a group fight, the first priority was to deal with those with longer arms. This was common knowledge in the cultivation world of the 9 provinces. For people like spell cultivators, once they were given space and distance, they would be able to unleash their full power. Moreover, compared to weapon cultivators and body cultivators who were used to close combat, spell cultivators had weaker bodies and were easier to kill. There were many spell cultivators gathered here, especially Chu Yun and Zhou Pei. Who else could Lu Yi target but them? They had never expected that Lu Yi would be able to get close to them so easily. They knew that their fire dragon technique had ruined their plan, but they also didn't expect that Lu Yi would be able to come out unscathed under such a powerful attack. Spell cultivators who were close to weapon cultivators naturally had to quickly distance themselves. So when they saw Lu Ye's saber slashing down, the two of them didn't even think about it. They surged their spirit chi at the same time and a huge repulsive force swept out in all directions. Sha Chu and Xiao Liang immediately frowned. The feeling from the spirit artifact saber in his hand made him feel that something was wrong. Logically speaking, even if the power of his saber was reduced by the defensive spirit rune, it should have been enough to cut open Lu Ye's back. Coupled with the attacks of Tan Sheng and the others, Lu Yi would undoubtedly die. But judging from the feeling from the slash, the damage it caused to Lu Yi didn't seem to be as good as expected. He had once killed a 9th order body cultivator from Grand Heaven Alliance. The other party's physique was strong, so his slash couldn't cause any effective damage. At most it would cause some flesh wounds. In that battle he fought with the other party for half a day and finally killed him. The feeling from the slash on Lu Ye's body was even clearer and stronger than before. This guy has such a strong physique. Without time to think, Xiao Liang's face changed. Not good. It turned out that Lu Yi had borrowed the power of these people's attacks to rush forward like a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye he had arrived in front of Zhou Pei. Zhou Pei's face changed. She and Chu Yun had just used their techniques to push Lu Yi away, even if there were 9 of them. Some of the myriad demon ridge cultivators were caught off guard and were thrown off their feet. The scene was chaotic. Lu Yi also seemed to have been pushed back a few dozen meters. However, Chu Yun clearly saw that Lu Yi had taken the initiative to retreat. He hadn't been pushed away. This guy has extremely rich experience in fighting against Dharma cultivators. He must have been tossed around like this before. But when Chu Yun saw the scene behind Lu Yi, his panicked mood immediately calmed down. Because this moment was enough for the nearby myriad demon ridge cultivators to come to their aid, especially Xiao Liang and Tan Sheng. Powerful spirit chi surged. It was infuriating. Attacking left and right, their blood boiled as they attacked without mercy. Die. Xiao Liang roared. He slashed the long saber in his hand at Lu Ye's back. At the same time, Tan Sheng and a few other myriad demon ridge cultivators who reacted quickly also attacked. Lu Yi seemed to have eyes on his back. As his spirit chi surged, a thick spirit tattoo suddenly formed and turned into a barrier. Many attacks fell on the barrier formed by the defensive spirit tattoo and shattered it. Then many attacks fell on Lu Ye's body, slashing his back and causing blood to flow out. He needed an instant to calm down. At this moment she was in her most vulnerable state. And Lu Yi actually arrived in front of her at this subtle moment. Feeling the oppressive and violent aura, she smelled the call of death. She desperately summoned her spirit chi, but didn't maintain her own defense. She had a feeling that such a defense was meaningless. Sparks of light emanated from his body and spread out, enveloping a large area. Every spark transmitted an extremely dangerous aura. The prelude to Liao Yuan's explosive burial. Once in the battle arena, Liao Yuan had used this secret technique of the Sacred Flame sect on Lu Yi. It was extremely powerful. If Liao Yuan could use it, so could Zhou Pei. It had to be said that this woman from the Sacred Flame sect was extremely decisive and ruthless. Not only was she ruthless to her enemies, but she was also ruthless to herself. Once such a technique was activated, Lu Yi would be swept up in it and she wouldn't be able to avoid it. At that time, who would live and who would die would depend on their own methods. Chapter 755. Since Zhou Pei chose to activate it at this time, a secret technique that did not distinguish between friend and foe naturally had a certain degree of confidence. Yes. In any case, she was the one who initiated the secret technique. Zhan was able to control himself to a certain extent, receiving the least impact and damage. Sparks filled the air. Originally they wanted to come. Many of the myriad demons-rich cultivators who had rushed to the rescue also sensed the danger. He didn't dare to get any closer. Instead he quickly retreated. Go. Looking at the ferocious figure in front of him, Zhou Pei. Although she looked flustered, her beautiful eyes were filled with viciousness. Explode. Along with the sound, those inconspicuous sparks instantly brightened up in the sky. Small suns appeared in the sky. Scorching and destructive auras with the many little suns. As it rose, it swept out in all directions, distorting the void. The rumbling sound of the song was endless, deafening. Clang. Junior sister Zhou. Not far away, Chu Yun gazed at the enormous light and chaos. In the place where the chaotic spiritual power surged, a worried expression appeared on his face. Color. But soon his eyes became firm. Since junior martial sister Zhou chose to do this, then he could only believe it. However, in the next instant his expression changed drastically. Because in the chaos of space invisible to the naked eye suddenly, an aura was extinguished. That aura was the one that accompanied him day and night. Was Zhou Pei's. However, there was no other aura that belonged to Lu Yi. There was not the slightest change. Chu Yun's pupils constricted, and the depths of his heart were instantly drowned by a great sorrow. Although he didn't want to believe it, he had no choice. He didn't see what happened, but he was sure. It was certain that junior sister Zhou had fallen. Chu Yun was not the only one who sensed this. Xiao Liang, Tan Xing, and the others' expressions changed at the same time. The afterglow of small suns dissipated, dazzling the light converged, and a blurry figure gradually appeared in the crowd. In his field of vision, judging from his height and figure, who was Lu Yi? He stood in the middle of the raging flames. He was as steady as a mountain, twisting his body in the scorching heat. Chirumo. Another figure suddenly descended from midair. It was Zhou Pei who fell down silently. Looking around, he saw Zhou Pei's eyes widened as if he had seen something before he died. It was an extremely inconceivable thing. Blood was everywhere. It was obvious that he had been stabbed in the heart and died on the spot. Wife. Almost at the same time, Chu Yun instinctively turned his gaze to Zhou. At the moment of Pei's corpse, a fiery red light appeared. Suddenly, it emerged from the distorted space and shot towards Chu Yun. Chu Yun immediately regained his senses and looked over. The fiery red light was a pure condensation of spiritual power. The other end of the long whip was held in the ground. On Ye's hand. What is this? Chu Yun was shocked. He instinctively felt that this should be the case. It's the power of some kind of treasure, but it looks like it's a kind of treasure. What kind of sorcery? He did not have time to think. He could feel the might of the whip. He pulled away and was about to retreat. However, the long whip was like a spirit snake as it lashed out at him. With a pole and another roll, he tied him up tightly. Under normal circumstances, Chu Yun was a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator. He shouldn't be so careless. Zhou Pei's death was to his benefit. The impact on his mind was too great, and he didn't expect Lu Yi to be able to do it. Using such a strange method, he was caught off guard. He made a move. The moment it was tied up, the other end of the long whip there was a huge pulling force, and no matter how Chu Yun struggled, he couldn't break free, and his body was pulled over uncontrollably. What shocked him even more was that not only did the long whip bind his physical body, but it also had a certain effect on his spirit energy. There was also a certain degree of suppression, making it impossible for him to resist. He had no strength left. In a trance, Lu Ye's cold face was imprinted in his eyes. Then a snow-white saber light flashed past. The world was silent. Chu Yun stood in front of Lu Yi and watched quietly. Xia Liang and Tan Xing did not act rashly. Their eyes were filled with fear. Most of the other 10,000 Demons Ridge cultivators hadn't recovered yet. They had just recovered from the chaos and weren't sure what had happened. What had happened? Until this moment, when Zhou Pei used the Scorch Original Explosive Burial Secret Technique's residual power slowly dissipated. The space returned to normal, and Lu Yi and Chu Yun were close to each other. What kind of spell is this? Chu Yun suddenly asked. He asked. At this moment he was finally sure. It bound him. His fiery red whip of spiritual power was a spell, and it was a spell. It wasn't the power of a rare treasure. He had read Lu Ye's information and knew that Lu Yi was a saber-using weapon cultivator. Not only did he have profound attainments in the Tao of Array, he also cultivated some spells. But the information had never mentioned such a spell. The existence of a spell, and in his knowledge, the 9-province cultivation world did not seem to have such a strange spell. As someone who had personally experienced the power of this spell, naturally he could sense how powerful this technique was. This spell had the effect of binding the enemy, but it could also kill the enemy. God-beating whip. Lu Yi replied indifferently. This spell did not come from the talent tree, nor did it come from his own cultivation. It came from the dragon soaring realm. Qin Zhao, who had stirred up a storm at a certain time. At the end of his trip to the dragon soaring realm, he spied on the dragon soaring realm. The power of the origin saw countless or shining lights in it, or dim stars, each of which is a ray of light. Mark. It was the mark left behind by the experts who had once lived in the dragon soaring realm. It was the mark that they had once lived in the dragon soaring realm. It was proof that they had lived. Lu Yi spied on one of the marks and had a very strange experience. It was a miraculous experience, in which he was able to possess Qin Zhao's body and was born with him. They joined the sect, cultivated together and fell together. They made a comeback and dominated the world together. Although only 2 days had passed since then. In that kind of dreamlike experience, Lu Yi had more than 2 days had passed. The important moments of Qin Zhao's life were imprinted. In his heart, he could empathize with Qin Zhao's cultivation. It could be said that during the time when he accompanied Qin Zhao as he grew up, he could take over everything that Qin Zhao had comprehended. The remnant origin of the dragon soaring realm was itself a huge treasure trove that had not been developed. And as a spell cultivator Qin Zhao could use, there were naturally many types of spells that came, and they were exquisite and profound. The God-beating whip was a spell that Qin Zhao created himself. It was his best spell, so even if Lu Yi did not cultivate it before, he could easily use it at this moment. Of course, because of his limited cultivation he could not use this spell. The full power of a spell could be used to deal with cultivators of the same realm, but it was more than enough. The world now only knew that Lu Yi was extremely skilled in the Tao of Arrays. However, no one knew of his high attainments on the path of Dharma cultivators. On the path of spell cultivators, he was far ahead of spell cultivators of the same realm. If he really wanted to, the spell that he could use was also, it was definitely not something that cultivators of the same realm could compare to. Amazing! Chu Yun praised. As a spell cultivator he had even more experience. After personally experiencing the power of this spell, he naturally saw the mysteriousness of it. If such a spell cultivator were to cultivate it, when one reached a high level once it was activated, no one would be able to get rid of it. He gently led the way. With just this simple action, his head had already fallen. Blood spurted out from his neck and the incision was neat. It was neat. Lu Yi had already beheaded him with a single slash. Everyone was terrified. Dead. 2 Cloud River Realm spell cultivators died just like that. Dead. They did not see clearly how Zhou Pei died. Because when the prairie fire explosion burial erupted, the scene was too chaotic. Lu Yi and Zhou Pei were both swept up in the chaos. They saw how Chu Yun died. There was a clue. But it was precisely because of this that they found it hard to believe. The Cloud River Realm 9th Order was already the limit of the Cloud River battlefield. The limit of Na was that he could call out wherever he went. No one dared to provoke a character who could summon the wind and rain. But in that short period of time just now, The two great powerful Cloud River Realm spell cultivators were killed just like that. Right under their noses. There were also more than a dozen 7th or 8th order cultivators who died together. Cultivators. How long had it been? Since Lu Ye's sudden attack, it had only been 10 breaths. It was just a moment. Chapter 756. The death of two powerful 9th order Cloud River Realm cultivators caused panic to spread. The main reason was that Chu Yun and Zhou Pei had died too quickly. In front of Lu Yi, it was as if they had no power to fight back. This undoubtedly had a great impact on the many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who were chasing after them. What are you waiting for? Let's attack together and kill him. Tan Xing suddenly shouted. Lu Ye's performance was shocking, and his increase in strength was incredible, but he was still alone. No matter how strong he was, what could he do? He could kill a dozen people, but could he really kill dozens or even hundreds? Even so, there were 200 myriad Demon Ridge cultivators gathered here. They could grind him to death. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. The difference in numbers was the biggest advantage of the myriad Demon Ridge. It had to be said that although the cultivations of these myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were uneven, and they came from all over the world, they all had a fierce temperament. Therefore, even though the scene just now had shocked them, after Tan Xing's voice fell, many cultivators still made a move together. After seeing how Lu Yi killed Chu Yun, no one dared to step forward rashly. They all urged their imperial artifacts or spells to attack Lu Yi. Lu Ye's spirit energy and vitality surged, intertwining to form a solid shield that emitted a scarlet color. At first glance, his whole body seemed to be burning. Facing the many attacks coming from all directions, he only focused on one direction. A pair of fiery red spirit energy wings spread out behind him, and his figure flickered as he pounced in that direction. Even if there are tens of thousands of people, I will go. His valiant and peerless aura coincided with the essence of the tyrant saber art. Although he was in a fierce battle, Lu Yi still had many profound insights flowing through his mind. He had no time to comprehend them. In such a big battle, how could he have the time to do anything else? With Lu Ye's charge, many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators in this direction naturally hurriedly scattered. However, there were still some who did not react fast enough and could not dodge Lu Ye's attack. Surrounded by a courageous aura, the coiling mountain blade slashed out a snow-white blade light. Flapping his wings, his silhouette flew through the crowd. Blood splattered everywhere and miserable shrieks rang out. Silhouettes fell from the sky. With one slash, several people died. Although the cultivation of those who died was not high, they were still able to succeed in such a situation. It was enough to show the ferocity of this slash. This was not the end. Lu Yi stared at the figure of a myriad Devil Ridge cultivator who was fleeing in front of him. Suddenly, his left and right hand, which was not holding a saber, slowly made a grabbing motion. In the center of his palm, a ball of condensed fiery red spiritual energy was caught in his palm. The spirit energy visible to the naked eye wriggled and changed. Under his exquisite control, it outlined a series of mysterious and complicated patterns. Like bamboo shoots after a rain, it grew rapidly and turned into a long whip in the blink of an eye. The deity striking whip reappeared. She raised her whip and lashed out at the figure. It struck the back of the myriad Demon's Ridge cultivator. This whip almost pulled out the soul of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivator. He screamed miserably and his heart was filled with grief and indignation. Why is it me? So many people are fleeing in all directions. Why am I the one being targeted? The moment he was hit by the deity-beating whip, he finally understood what Chu Yun felt before. He also understood why such a powerful 9th order cultivator could not even resist in front of Lu Yi. Because of this whip, the spiritual energy in his body was scattered, and he almost couldn't maintain his body. Without giving him any time to resist, the deity-beating whip wrapped around him and fixed him in place. Lu Ye's figure swept past him and the mountain-coiling saber slashed in a subtle arc, no longer paying attention to him. The person left behind fell straight to the ground, his vitality dissipating. Chasing after the myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators who were fleeing in all directions, the deity-beating whip in his hand constantly swept out. Every time he killed a dozen people in a short period of time. Killing enemies in the same realm was like chopping melons and vegetables. In the past, these myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators would only think that this was an exaggeration to describe a person's strength. But today they saw it with their own eyes. Every one of them was terrified. In terms of speed, they were not as fast as Lu Yi, so there was no way they could escape. Moreover, Lu Yi could use the deity beating whip to restrain them. In the midst of the fierce battle, a cultivator full of vitality suddenly seized the opportunity and rushed towards Lu Yi from the side. Facing such a ferocious enemy, only a body cultivator with a strong physique would have the courage to do so. This body cultivator who suddenly attacked had been hiding in the crowd, not showing his strength. It was only at this moment that Lu Yi noticed his cultivation. Cloud River Realm 9th Order. It had to be said that the body cultivator who stood out at such a time made many myriad demons ridge cultivators feel relieved. The body cultivator held a spirit artifact shield in one hand and a mace-like spirit artifact in the other. Coupled with his burly figure, he gave off a strong sense of oppression. At this moment, Lu Ye's deity-beating whip just happened to wrap around a person not far away. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he pushed the spirit artifact shield in his hand forward. It slammed heavily into Lu Yi with an earth-shattering force. However, Lu Yi did not move at all. The body cultivator was shocked. The moment his spirit artifact shield slammed into Lu Yi, he felt as if he had hit an ancient tree rooted in the ground instead of a person. Shocked, he raised the spirit artifact in his other hand and smashed it down towards Lu Ye's head. Die! The strike was like a mountain pressing down. Accompanied by the eruption of his full strength, he was confident that no one in the same realm could block it. Even if Lu Ye's head was not smashed open, he would definitely be severely injured. Once that happened, he would die without a doubt if the surrounding people attacked again. The many thoughts that flashed through his mind were suddenly drowned out by boundless horror, because in the face of his aggressive strike, Lu Yi raised his saber to meet it. Attacking later but arriving first, the collision of their spirit artifacts and spirit chi caused a loud bang. The crushing force of the mountain suddenly dissipated, and the mace that was smashing down was also firmly blocked. The body cultivator's eyes shrank to the size of a needle tip as he cried out involuntarily, How can a weapon cultivator like you have such powerful strength?" However, before he could finish his words, an even more powerful force erupted. It was as if an earth dragon had turned over, and a copious and irresistible force attacked from the front. The weapon cultivator cried out in his heart, but before he could do anything he was sent flying. Fortunately, he had a spirit artifact shield in front of him. Otherwise this saber strike would have split him in two. "Lui!" Xiao Liang roared and a sharp saber intent swept out. Saber light flashed, enveloping Lu Yi who was standing in place. At the same time, Tan Xing also attacked from the side. Since Lu Yi made his move, the two of them had been looking for an opportunity. However, Lu Yi was chasing the fleeing myriad demon ridge cultivators, and they were chasing after Lu Yi so they could not make a move at all. It was not until now that Lu Yi was blocked for a moment by a body cultivator that they had a good opportunity to make a move. Especially at this time, Lu Ye's back was facing him. Although Xiao Liang did not want to take advantage of others, the other party was Lu Yi, so there was nothing to say. At the same time he saw Tan Xing, who was rushing over, being sent flying at an even faster speed than when he came. Before he could cause any real damage to Lu Yi suddenly turned around and slashed down with his saber. Xiao Liang was suddenly alerted and instinctively raised his saber to block. Asterisk boom. Asterisk as if he had been hit by a meteorite, Xiao Liang turned into a stream of light and flew straight to the ground, creating a crater. He got up in a sorry state, feeling the blood in his chest and abdomen tumbling, and his mouth was full of blood. So strong. Xiao Yang's eyes trembled violently. When he realized that Lu Yi was already an 8th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator, he was already mentally prepared to not be his opponent. But only when he faced him in person could he realize how terrifying and powerful his opponent was. Compared to when he, Tan Xing, Chu Yun, and Zhou Pei worked together to send Lu Yi flying into the forbidden area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda, Lu Yi was completely different now. What made him feel even more horrified and sad was that after repelling him, Lu Yi did not choose to pursue him. Instead, he rushed to wherever there were more people. This seemed to mean that he, who had once chased Lu Yi all over the mountains and plains, was no longer qualified to be his opponent. Damn it! Xiao Liang gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. He calmed the blood in his chest and rushed into the sky again. As a core disciple of this generation of the Wild Blade sect, he shouldered the responsibility of bringing glory to the sect. When had he ever been looked down upon like this? On the other side, Tan Xing felt the same way and made the same choice as Xiao Liang. The cultivators of Myriad Demon Ridge complained incessantly. At this moment, It looked like they were besieging Lu Yi, but in fact, it was like an ancient beast was robbing them. Wherever Lu Yi pounced, there would be the aura of death. The heads and limbs that had been chopped off by the long saber kept falling from the sky. Of the 200 people who chased Lu Yi out of Heavenji City, only a little more than 100 were left. The loss rate was as high as 40%. Hold on, he's about to die. In the midst of despair, someone roared to encourage them. In such a chaotic battle, even if Lu Yi had defensive spiritual tattoos protecting his body, it was impossible for him to be unscathed. At this point in the battle, his clothes were dyed red with blood, some of it his own, some of it his enemies'. The clothes on his upper body were almost torn into rags, hanging on his body. Through the gaps in his clothes, one could vaguely see the scars on his body. This was also the reason why the cultivators of Myriad Demon Ridge did not retreat even after Lu Yi had killed so many enemies and displayed such ferocity. Lu Yi's strength was terrifying, but after all, a person's strength was limited. He had suffered so many injuries that he must be an arrow at the end of its flight. If they gave up now, all their previous efforts would be in vain. At this point in the battle, even if it was not for the huge reward, even if there was no enmity between them and Lu Yi, they still wanted to see the result with their own eyes. A result that everyone was looking forward to, the fall of a genius. 7017K. Chapter 757. The fierce battle raged on. Many figures danced in the air as colorful world energy rays intertwined and shuttled back and forth. Apart from a few Cloud River Ninth Order cultivators, none of the remaining Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators were Lu Ye's match. Whether it was a 7th Order or 8th Order cultivator, as long as Yang Kai found an opportunity, his saber would either kill or seriously injure them. Even the several Cloud River Ninth Order cultivators were unable to withstand the indescribably violent slashes and were forced into dire straits. The number of Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators continued to decrease. However, even though Lu Yi looked miserable, his aura grew stronger and stronger as he fought, as if there was no end to it. The shouts of the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge rose and fell one after another, cheering for themselves and encouraging others at the same time. Lu Ye's tattered shirt was suddenly torn off. It was almost torn into strips of cloth, and his blood-stained shirt was torn off, revealing Lu Ye's slender and muscular upper body. His upper body was already stained red with blood, and under the scorching sun, he looked like he was wearing a red armor. However, all the Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators' eyes were filled with shock at this moment. They finally understood why Lu Yi hadn't died yet. This was because his body was covered with wounds of various sizes. However, not a single drop of blood flowed out from each of the wounds. In fact, some of the wounds even showed signs of healing. What kind of recovery ability was this? What kind of terrifying physique did he have? Search. Before this, everyone thought that after suffering so many injuries, Lu Yi must be at the end of his rope. It wasn't until they saw the truth of his injuries that they understood. Everything before this was just their own wishful thinking. Their thoughts of hostility continued. Such an enemy was no longer someone they Cloud River Realm cultivators could deal with. He was a King monster. There had never been a lack of courageous cultivators in the group of cultivators. Previously, even if they had suffered many casualties, they would still fight to the death with Lu Yi. Now that they saw the reality and realized that they couldn't defeat the enemy in front of them, some of them naturally made the right choice. Run. A low shout rang out, and the Myriad Demons Ridge cultivator who spoke immediately turned into a stream of light and fled into the distance. Knowing that you couldn't defeat your enemy, that wasn't bravery but stupidity. There were many capable people in the world of cultivation. No one could say that they were invincible. If they couldn't win, they would run. There was nothing to be ashamed of. Preserving their lives was the most important thing. As soon as someone moved, someone immediately followed. In an instant, many Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators gathered around Lu Yi. This was where the confidence of the Demon Ridge cultivators came from. Everyone in the Myriad Demon Ridge thought that he was Big Brother Chang's weakest, but in reality the injuries he had suffered were just superficial wounds. He just looked miserable. Even those flesh wounds were rapidly recovering under the immense vitality of his body. Xiaoyang was right. Compared to before entering the Soaring Dragon Realm's secret realm, Lu Yi had indeed undergone a complete transformation. At this moment, after seeing the true state of Lu Yi's injuries, all the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who were still holding on to hope felt their bodies turn cold. They had worked so hard for so long and sacrificed so many lives, but they had only caused some superficial wounds to the enemy? What a laughable and pitiful scene. Unwillingness, anger, grievance, all kinds of emotions surged in their hearts, but it also caused many people to lose contact with Lu Yeji. They couldn't avoid the fate of dying one after another. Everyone was aghast. A huge question arose in their hearts. Why was Lu Yi still not dead? Why wasn't he dead? Up until now, many myriad demon ridge cultivators had caused at least hundreds of injuries to him. Under normal circumstances, the other party should have lost the ability to fight. How could the more he fought, the fiercer he became? After another fierce confrontation, Lu Yi stood in mid-air. Cultivators from the myriad demons ridge surrounded him from all directions. Lu Yi didn't attack again, and the myriad demon ridge cultivators didn't dare to act rashly. They were all on guard, secretly urging their spiritual power. The scene was tense. He raised his eyes and swept across the faces in front of him. He casually waved the mountain saber in his hand and grabbed it. His saber. 2 of them were already dead, so there were only 2 left. He turned his head and stared at Tan Sheng, who was at the side. The moment their gazes met, a cold, murderous intent surged. Tan Sheng's heart skipped a beat. Without any hesitation, he quickly retreated and shouted, "Go!" These words were clearly shouted at Xiao Liang. He had been targeted by Lu Yi. Based on the means that Lu Yi had shown just now, he felt that he was doomed. Even if Xiao Liang was willing to stay and help him, the 2 of them were no match for the current Lu Yi. Since that was the case, he might as well survive. He would try his best to delay Lu Yi and give Xiao Liang a chance to live. With this thought in mind, a bloody mist burst out from his body, and he used the fastest speed in his life to escape to the back. However, what he saw was that the fiery red wings on Lu Yi's back only flapped lightly, and he was even faster than him. Swoosh! More than a dozen people left. In the next moment, more people chose to leave, and a gap immediately appeared in the tight encirclement. Working together was an atmosphere. Once it was broken at such a juncture, it could no longer be maintained. More people began to flee. Lu Yi frowned. He didn't expect that just taking off his shirt would cause such a situation. In the battle, his shirt had been torn into strips of cloth. It would affect his performance if he continued to wear it, so it was naturally more convenient to take it off. But it caused such a result. However, he soon understood the reason for this. He didn't chase after the fleeing myriad Devil Ridge cultivators because there was no need. Among this group, he only had to kill 4 people. Dudu chased after him. The distance between them was rapidly closing. Sure enough, he couldn't escape. Tan Sheng's heart was cold. Between life and death, he was unprecedentedly calm. He desperately urged his spiritual power and burned his qi and blood, just to increase his speed by a little and delay Lu Yi as much as possible. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3, the distance between them was already less than 10 feet. Tan Sheng's retreating figure suddenly stopped. Then, in an incomprehensible way, he changed from extreme stillness to extreme motion, brazenly pouncing toward Lu Yi, the long spear in his hand stabbing out. Time seemed to stop at this moment. Tan Sheng's heart suddenly gave birth to all kinds of understanding. This spear, which he had poured all his strength into, had exceeded his own limits. There were great terrors between life and death, but also great opportunities. In his perception, the vitality in Lu Ye's body was like a ball of fire burning fiercely, vigorous and frightening. The strong vitality naturally made the physique stronger, and at the same time, it also made the recovery ability more outstanding. Before the trip to the Soaring Dragon Realm, Lu Ye's physique was comparable to a body cultivator of the same level. And the trip to the Soaring Dragon Realm allowed him to obtain the final source of the Soaring Dragon Realm. After coming back from the dead, his vitality was as vast as the sea. This was also why when Lu Yi rushed out of the Soaring Dragon Realm, Hua Xiai sensed that his vitality was almost comparable to Shui Yuan's. The benefits of a vast vitality were not only tyrannical recovery ability, could also make the physique stronger. Of course, it was not at the level of a Divine Sea Realm cultivator, but if a Cloud River Realm cultivator wanted to cause real effective damage to him, it would be difficult. It would be very difficult. This was why he dared to face more than 2 million people alone. Comparatively speaking, Xiao Liang gave Lu Yi a greater sense of threat, and Tan Sheng was always a level higher. Now it seemed that he really couldn't underestimate anyone. Perhaps those who were originally inferior to others could surpass those who came later after an epiphany. In the face of this awe-inspiring spear, Lu Yi quickly raised his saber and stabbed forward. Tan Sheng was still immersed in his many comprehensions, wholeheartedly devoted to his spear. Suddenly, the scene in front of him changed. The scorching sun was clearly shining in the sky, but he seemed to see a sky full of twinkling stars. Then those twinkling stars wrapped in the sky and poured down. The stars fell, drowning the figure of the dragon. No matter how the dragon struggled and roared, it was useless. All the scenery shattered like an illusion. Tan Xing was still in midair, holding his spear. Breathing heavily, he quietly looked at Lu Yi in front of him. This spear thrust with the intention of perishing together with the enemy allowed Tan Xing to see through the secret of his own sect, a trace of the mystery of the great sage dragon spear. It turned out that he had practiced it wrong before. Lu Yi was aware of this momentary change in Tan Xing. When his spear thrust forward, Lu Yi couldn't help but feel a trace of danger. In a trance, what appeared in his vision was not a spear, but a dragon shaking its head and wagging its tail. Opening its bloody mouth, it wanted to swallow him into its stomach. Spear intent. Tan Xing's spear had undoubtedly touched upon the level of intent. If he survived this time, his strength would definitely grow by leaps and bounds, and he would have a chance to become one of the strongest Cloud River realm cultivators. Tan Xing and Xiao Liang had been inseparable these days. Both of their cultivations were Cloud River 9th order, but when he looked down he saw that his spear had pierced Lu Ye's waist and abdomen, but it had only pierced 3 inches into his flesh, not piercing through Lu Ye's entire body. Lu Ye's physique was so strong that it made people jealous. What kind of saber technique is this? Tan Xing asked. Starry sky. Lu Yi answered as he raised his hand and pulled out the spear that had pierced into his body. Blood burst out, but soon the flesh around the wound wriggled and no more blood flowed out. It's really powerful. Tan Xing was not stingy with his praise. Changing the topic, he said, It's not that my great sage dragon spear is inferior to your starry sky, it's that my cultivation is not good enough, and my skill is inferior. After saying this, his head suddenly hung down, and the aura that had locked his body dissipated. His whole body was like a balloon that had been pierced with countless holes. Blood flew out and fell straight to the ground below. Tan Xing was dead. Even before his death, he seriously defended the prestige of his sect's secret technique. Lu Yi could understand, but since they were enemies and the other party had repeatedly made things difficult for him before, he naturally wouldn't show mercy. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.